Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Courtney Schulhoff. Courtney Schulhoff was born in 1987 in Florida to Stephen and Tracy. While details about her childhood are limited, we do know that her parents divorced when she was young, which was a challenging experience for her. After the divorce, her mother moved out and Courtney stayed with her father. Eventually, Stephen faced significant financial problems, which led to their move. In 2003, Courtney attended Lyman High School. She was a hardworking student at first, but after her parents divorced, her grades began to drop rapidly. She rarely attended school, stopped trying, and became a poor student. Outside of school, Courtney's personality also changed. She began hanging out with a group of friends who were known for bad behavior, which negatively affected her. Tensions between Courtney and her father Stephen escalate, forcing her to temporarily move in with her mother Tracy. However, this arrangement does not last long. Tracy cannot accept the changes in Courtney, so Stephen has no choice but to welcome her back home. Once again, Courtney and her father face unresolved issues, including her difficulties with school. During this time, Courtney and her friends often gather at the racetrack across from her school, where she meets and begins dating a 20-year-old college student named Michael. Michael Morin was a former high school football player who, unlike Courtney, had performed well academically. He received straight A's and was now attending a nearby college. His parents had high expectations for him, but everything changed after he met Courtney. After a few weeks of talking, they began spending all their free time together. Courtney's father, Stephen, was extremely upset about her poor grades, and this only intensified when he learned about her decision to be with Michael. He quickly started blaming Michael for this choice. Their relationship was already strained, and this situation made it worse. Courtney felt that her father didn't want her to be happy. She tried to explain that Michael was a good person, but Stephen refused to see him in that way. He had heard rumors about Michael being involved in car theft and wanted to caution Courtney that no matter what Michael did, he would never earn her father's approval. After a series of arguments, Courtney began to accuse her father of being abusive, and there was some evidence to support her accusations. One day, when Courtney invited some friends over, including Michael, her father Stephen came home earlier than expected, leading to an altercation. While Courtney and her friends were drinking and smoking, Stephen suddenly entered the room. Enraged, he yelled at his daughter for throwing a party without his permission. After a brief argument, Stephen punched Courtney in the face in front of her friends. The situation between Courtney and her father, Stephen, remained tense. Although Courtney had stopped going to school, she refused to find a job and frequently used her father's credit card without asking. She would come home with new clothes and items purchased online. By this time, Stephen's financial situation had worsened, making things even more challenging. For several months, Courtney continued her troubling behavior, often sneaking Michael into their home at night while her father was asleep. Eventually, Stephen prohibited Courtney from seeing her boyfriend, but she ignored his wishes and invited Michael over whenever she pleased. Every conversation between Courtney and her father focused on his harsh criticism of Michael. As the months passed, the situation became increasingly difficult. One day, Stephen checked his bank account and noticed some money missing. He called the police, reporting his daughter to them, apparently to teach her a lesson. After speaking with the police, Courtney returned home, now much more afraid of her father. She began to see him as strict, unkind, and a real threat. She devised a plan, determined to break free from Stephen's control. By the end of 2003, Stephen was in a relationship with a woman named Elaine. During this same time, Courtney was working towards earning her high school diploma while continuing to date Michael. Frustrated by Courtney's father's efforts to control their relationship, the couple decided to run away. However, they faced a major obstacle. Neither had a car or any money. Their plan was to take Michael's father's car and drive to Maryland, where they could ask Courtney's grandparents for financial assistance. Unfortunately, things did not go as planned. Michael stole his father's car, but while on the way to Maryland, they changed their minds and turned back home. This decision led to serious consequences for both Michael and Courtney. Michael's parents reported him to the police, and he was charged with car theft, resulting in a 70-day. Furthermore, Michael's parents insisted that he end his relationship with Courtney, believing it to be detrimental to him. This relationship was indeed harmful to both of them. Michael was forced to break up with Courtney, but he refused. As a result, his parents decided to kick him out of the house, leaving him homeless. He began sneaking into Courtney's apartment to sleep there, something he had done occasionally before, but now happened every night. Additionally, Michael dropped out of college, changed his address to Stevens, and put Stevens' phone number on his parole application without Stevens' involvement or permission. Although Michael had nowhere to live, he made no attempt to find a job, which left Courtney to pay all of her father's credit card bills. When Steven attempted to talk to his daughter about her mounting debt, an unforeseen tragedy struck first. On February 10, 2004, Elaine, Steven's new girlfriend, attempted to call him multiple times, but he didn't answer. Concerned that something might be wrong, she decided to go to his house. Between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m., she drove to his place and was surprised by what she saw. Michael, Courtney's boyfriend, was walking down the street with Steven's dog, wearing one of Steven's t-shirts. Feeling uneasy, Elaine got out of her car and approached the front door of Steven's house, where she found Courtney standing by the entrance. Elaine tried to enter, but the door was locked. She asked Courtney where her father was, but Courtney said she didn't know and left without opening the door, taking the key with her. Elaine saw that Steven's truck was still parked in its usual spot, which made her even more worried, so she decided to call the police. When the local police arrived, they quickly obtained a search warrant following Elaine's phone call. They entered the house through the back door and began their search, uncovering a horrific scene. Inside Steven's room, they found blood splatter on the walls. The most shocking discovery was Steven's body in a plastic trash can. He had a severed ear and a disfigured face. It was clear that the perpetrator didn't bother to hide their actions. Additionally, the police found several bank statements on the dining room table, many of them circled in pen. Meanwhile, Courtney was missing. Elaine learned of the altercation between Steven, his daughter, and her boyfriend, so the police quickly began a search. The police found Michael in the restroom of the mall across the street from Steven's house. As Elaine said, he was wearing one of Steven's t-shirts and had Steven's wallet, car keys, and credit cards in his possession. The police took Michael in for questioning. After leaving her father's apartment earlier that day, Courtney simply went to her mother's house, where her mother made her turn herself in. During questioning, Michael initially insisted that he knew nothing about the murder. Michael claimed that after being kicked out of the house, he had been living in Courtney's closet. One day, when Steven returned home, Courtney woke Michael up and told him that her father had found out he was staying with them. When he asked Courtney why, she said she would explain later and asked him to walk the dog, which he did. Michael ran to the mall because he was worried that Steven would find out he was near his home. However, after the police informed him of Steven's death, his story changed dramatically. He began to cry and said that after Steven tried to confront Courtney about the missing money on his credit card, she asked Michael to kill Steven and he agreed. His story shifts from being unaware of the death to saying he was asked to kill Steven. Courtney's interrogation was also unproductive. She gave two different statements. In her first interrogation, she blamed Michael entirely, claiming she had no knowledge of her father's death until he informed her. In a later confession, however, she revealed much more information to police. Courtney maintained that the murder was Michael's idea and admitted to helping him by removing Stephen's dog from the room before the incident and placing the bat by the bedroom door. She said she heard everything while Michael killed her father. But by the end of the trial in September 2006, her story had changed dramatically. Courtney was convicted of murder. When asked if she had any final statements, she maintained her innocence throughout the trial but stated that she wanted to publicly acknowledge that Michael Morin did not kill her father. She took full responsibility and agreed to her sentence. This shocking admission took everyone in the courtroom by surprise. However, Courtney's stance changed less than a year later. At Michael's trial in April 2007, where he faced the death penalty if convicted, Courtney did not repeat her previous statement that she was solely responsible for the crime and that Michael had nothing to do with it. Ultimately, Michael Morin was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. In 2017, Courtney Schulhoff was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Although both men involved were punished, the exact details of the case remain unclear. It was confirmed that Stephen was killed with a baseball bat. But it is still unclear which of the two did the killing. Courtney did not confess to killing her father, but Michael did. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Rachel Winkler. Rachel Hatfield was born in California in 1975. She is the second of 4 children to her parents, Don and Diana. When she was 10, her father left after her mother had a brief affair with a neighbor, so her parents divorced. Rachel, her siblings, and their mother then moved to Georgia. Then, she and her siblings rarely visited their father because of their strained relationship. Their mother had turned them against him, resulting in a lost custody battle for the father. The family breakup deeply affected Rachel, making it difficult for her to cope with her parents' separation. During her teenage years, she developed anorexia due to stress, and her weight dropped to a dangerous 30 kilograms. She was hospitalized at a psychiatric clinic in Modesto, where she received effective treatment. She eventually recovered, and even took up sports. After her recovery, she started to reconnect with her father, Don. He is proud of his daughter because she is very intelligent and the only girl in the family. The girl is the inspiration for his work. In school, she consistently achieved excellent grades across all subjects. As an adult, Rachel has dedicated herself to her work, with the desire to follow the example of his father, Don, a famous painter. In high school, Rachel met her boyfriend, Tim, who was also an artist. After finishing school, they moved in together. They faced their first difficulties in life, which were financial problems that people in the same profession often face, until they became famous and found their place. When they didn't have painting commissions, they created frescoes to decorate rooms, which turned out to be more profitable. This allowed them to rent more comfortable housing. Rachel attended the University of Sonoma, earning a degree in business and marketing. She excelled in mathematics, impressing her teachers from the start. After graduating with excellent degrees, she was offered a high-paying job, which she accepted. Nevertheless, she continued to support Tim and their art business. They had been together for 14 years, and everyone who knew them was confident they had a bright future ahead, with marriage and children. It seemed they were meant for each other. As Rachel approached the age of 30, she started thinking about becoming a mother. However, Tim was hesitant to support this idea. He wanted to first stabilize their finances, buy a house, and establish himself in his career. Realizing that this would take a long time, so she became impatient, not wanting to wait. This led to conflicts, and their once harmonious relationship began to deteriorate. By July 2005, their relationship was nearly over. Around this time, Rachel attended a dinner party where she met Todd Winkler. He was 8 years older than her and had built a successful career as a fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force. When they met, he also held a degree in computer engineering and ran a successful internet business. He was wealthy, owning a large house and even a plane. In addition to his success, he was attractive and very sociable. Todd had been married twice before. He married his first wife at a young age, but they later divorced due to disillusionment. His second wife tragically died in a car accident in 1999. Eager to find love again, Todd was searching for the right partner. When he met Rachel, he immediately felt she was that person. She was equally captivated by he, and they quickly sparked a romance. She ended her relationship with her boyfriend, Tim, to start dating Todd. Rachel and Todd were so in love that after just a few weeks of meeting, they were thinking about a future together and having children. Less than a month after they met, he invited she to a party, and then he proposed to her. She was so moved that she agreed immediately. Unfortunately for Tim, although he tried to mend his relationship with her, he was unsuccessful. Rachel informed her family and friends that she is very much in love with Todd, the man of her dreams, who had already proposed to her, and they planned to marry that summer. They had a beautiful wedding, and Rachel took her husband's last name, Winkler. This new chapter opened up opportunities she had only dreamed of. Together, they aimed to build a bright future. She quickly forgot the past that she lived with her ex-boyfriend for more than 10 years, with whom she overcame many different difficulties. A year after the wedding, Rachel became pregnant and she was overjoyed. On April 11, 2007, she and her wealthy husband, Todd, welcomed their daughter, Eva, and she adored her child. A year later, their second child, Ariel, was born. During this time, Rachel stays at home doing housework and taking care of the children while her husband goes to work. In early 2010, their family had big changes when Todd was accepted as a manager in a prestigious pharmaceutical company, 2 hours from their home. As a result, he started working late at his office in Alameda. During this time, the family lived in an area reserved for the extremely wealthy, where each had their own garage to park their personal jet. Feeling tired of her life at home, Rachel took a job as a manager at the nearby airport, a decision Todd supported. In September 2009, when Todd was working away from home, Rachel met a man named James White, who was doing repair work, and they struck up a friendly conversation. Around this time, her relationship with Todd began to deteriorate. The attachment and attraction they once felt for each other had faded. According to Rachel's relatives, she no longer seemed as happy or radiant as before. Todd discovered her relationship with James and was upset that she was spending more time with James, his colleague, than with him. He began to suspect that Rachel was developing feelings for James. Concerned, he sought advice from his father-in-law, Don, who followed the Ozan religion and upheld family values. Don strongly objected of his daughter's behavior, and he and Todd believed she was behaving inappropriately. Don viewed the situation from his own perspective, as a similar experience led his family to fall apart. After that, he spoke face to face with his daughter, Rachel, believing he could understand her and save her relationship with Todd. Don explained that he should not have ended things with Diana over an affair. A year after his divorce, he reconsidered the situation and realized that he should not have left his wife and children, but should have forgiven his wife. Because of his stubbornness, everyone faced serious difficulties. However, in his case, he could no longer change anything, so he asked his daughter to reconsider and leave James, and she promised to think about it. Despite her father's advice and opposition from Todd and others, Rachel continued to communicate with James, whom she adored. She admitted to her friends that she had fallen in love with James. Todd realized his marriage was crumbling, so he frequently sought advice from Rachel's father, Don, who persuaded him to fight for the marriage. After a while, Rachel realized that her father was right. She also knew that she would not be able to raise her child properly if she continued to have an affair. Therefore, she chose to mend her relationship with Todd. Her father was pleased that she heeded his advice and preserved the family. Todd forgave her, and their relationship improved. A few months later, they announced to friends and family that she is pregnant with her third child. Although he hoped for a son to inherit his business, his wife was content with having a third daughter. In March 2011, the couple left their children with Rachel's father, Don, and went on vacation to Florida to strengthen their relationship. It seemed their relationship had improved, as if they had rekindled their love. Rachel affirms that the child she is pregnant with is Todd's child, but some suspected she might be pregnant by her lover, James. However, not everything was smooth in the family. Behind their family's happy exterior are arguments. After the vacation, they had a big fight, and Todd went to Australia on business. He's staying there for some time. He even paid for Don's trip to visit him but didn't invite his wife and children, possibly because the long trip could be difficult for the children and the pregnant Rachel. Alternatively, this might indicate serious issues in their relationship. In Australia, he and Don enjoyed their time, relaxing and having fun almost every evening. Rachel, who had been apart from her husband, Todd, for a long time, occasionally reached out to her first boyfriend, Tim, who was an artist. She shared stories from her life with Tim, such as an incident involving credit cards. Todd had issued several cards in her name and even bought a plane under her name, leaving her with a $50,000 debt. However, Todd quickly paid off the debt, which didn't seem to be a problem for him. It seemed like she was boasting about her wealth. Tim still had feelings for Rachel, and it was difficult for him to hear these stories. But he held on to a small hope that they might get back together. When she was alone with the children and feeling bored, Rachel decided to pursue her ambitions. She returned to work at the airport and sent her children to kindergarten. Her father, Don, disapproved because he was religious and believed that a woman should stay home to care for her children. Additionally, since they were wealthy, there was no financial need for her to work. However, Rachel was determined to continue her career, and eventually, her father relented, allowing her to work and interact with others. During this time, Rachel's former lover, James, started his own business near where she worked. Her father advised her to avoid James to resist any temptation, as he sensed there was more than just friendship between them. James had been married twice, with his second marriage ending in divorce, and he was seeking a new relationship. However, he didn't want to break up another family, so he kept his distance from her. As time went on, the situation evolved. In early June 2010, Rachel called James and said that she was blindly in love with him and that she did not want to live with Todd anymore, which left James confused. Although both were married at the time, but James still loved Rachel, and they began meeting secretly. Rachel's husband, Todd, frequent business trips to Australia, which allowed James and Rachel to meet without obstacles. James even improved his relationship with Rachel's children. The hardest thing for Rachel and James was keeping their relationship a secret from their neighbors. At times, they acted too openly, leading to rumors about their secret affair. Eventually, James couldn't keep the relationship secret any longer and filed for divorce. He confessed to his wife that he loved Rachel. His wife was furious and informed Todd, who became very upset. Todd called Rachel, begged her to end her relationship with James for the sake of their children. Then, Rachel promised she would break up with her lover, James. Despite this promise, Rachel and James continued to meet, but more discreetly. In July 2011, the Winkler family welcomed their third child, a boy, Alex. Even though the child is not James's child, but he loved Rachel deeply and dreamed of a future with her, willing to raise her children. However, Todd eventually discovered that Rachel was still seeing James. This was really a big shock to Todd's. Naturally, Rachel's father disapproved of her actions and he supported Todd. Rachel's father, Don, suggested that Todd meet with James to discuss everything calmly, as rational men should, and Todd agreed. Then, Don and Todd went to James' house. When they arrived, James and his daughter, Caitlin, had just finished target practice. Then, they spoke calmly. Todd explains that he is Rachel's legal husband and he loves her very much. They had children together, and he asked James to stay away from her. James agreed but secretly had no intention of ending his relationship with Rachel. Actually, Rachel and James were planning to start a new life together. Rachel had told James that Todd was being tyrannical and tormenting her, though there was no evidence to support this. She even claimed her third pregnancy was a result of rape. This angered James, and he wanted to help her. In October 2011, Rachel visited her university friends for the weekend. She expressed frustrations about Todd not providing her with money, which forced her to borrow for essentials like diapers and food for the children. She revealed that their house was in urgent need of repair, but Todd had no plans to address this. She felt controlled and manipulated by him. Despite she not wanting a third child, but he forced her. She shared her predicament with at least 3 friends. It seems she is in a difficult situation and does not know how to continue raising her children in such an unhappy family situation. One of Rachel's university friends was a lawyer and offered she advice on marriage and divorce. Rachel plans to manage the family finances and wants to reach a fair separation agreement with Todd. She aimed to secure her share and settle alimony matters peacefully, but he was against the idea of divorce. In November 2011, Rachel stopped making mortgage payments on the house because Todd was not giving her money and was hiding his income from her. She began to suspect that he was planning something against her. On November 11th, she called her lawyer friend and expressed that she was ready to begin the divorce process. While Todd was in Amsterdam on a business trip, followed by a vacation, Rachel began filling out the divorce paperwork in February 2012. During this time, she told her lover, James, that her husband had discovered electronic divorce documents on her laptop and deleted them. To prevent this from happening again, she started filling out the forms by hand. Then Todd having learned about the divorce, but he wants to avoid it. Todd spoke to his father-in-law, Don, about Rachel, claiming she was mentally unstable, which was related to their upcoming divorce. Todd said she smoked, drank, and seemed to be losing weight again. However, Don, who saw his daughter Rachel regularly, didn't notice any issues. Rachel explained that her weight loss was due to the stress from the ongoing divorce. The family situation had become extremely tense and seemed headed for a bad outcome. By February 2012, Todd was severely depressed, which his business partner also observed. Todd's business partner suspected that Todd had mental issues because of the divorce, but he insisted that the problem was with his wife. He was considering having her treated in a psychiatric clinic, claiming she was on a drinking binge, and he needed a break to handle the problems that had come up. This conversation occurred on February 10th. On February 26, 2012, divorce proceedings will begin. Rachel was counting on alimony each month to support her children. She planned to move with the children to James' place and was expecting a court meeting. However, that evening, she never arrived at James' house. On the morning of the 27th, a neighbor saw Todd with the children, and everything seemed normal. Around 10:30 a.m., he left his children with a neighbor temporarily because something terrible had occurred at his home. Todd was awaiting the police and did not want his children to witness the situation. The neighbor observed that Todd appeared calm, had no injuries, and appeared to be just irritable. Then, Todd called 911 to report that 37-year-old Rachel had been killed in their home during a domestic dispute. Police arrived at approximately 10:40 a.m. Todd emerged from the house and told the officers his wife was dead inside the house. He was arrested and taken to the police station, where he agreed to speak with investigators without a lawyer. During the interrogation, he is still very calm. He admitted his wife had been having an affair for a long time and had filed for divorce, seeking full custody of their children. He said his wife made him lose his temper, leading to a violent conflict. He attacked her. But then he stopped when he heard their child crying, realizing the children could witness the altercation, so he moved them to another room. Todd returned to argue with his wife, which escalated. He struck her in the face, causing her to respond with a punch. He began to apologize because he realizing his mistake, but his wife approached with a pair of large scissors and cut his hands several times. They started fighting when he tried to take the scissors from his wife. Immediately after, he poked his wife in the eye with his thumb, which helped him knock the scissors out of her hand. He quickly left there to gather his children and take them to safety. Todd told investigators that he was worried about his wife's condition and behavior. He thought she was drunk and could be a threat to him and the children. When he returned home, he found his wife in the bedroom, sitting on the floor. As he approached her, she kicked him in the face. In a rage, he threw her to the floor and began to strangle her with both hands. However, she grabbed the scissors again, but he quickly took them away and struck her face and neck several times in self-defense. She pleaded with him not to kill her, she also promising to save their marriage, but he couldn't control his anger. He admitted that he forcefully stabbed her neck with the scissors. He confessed that, at that moment, he wanted her dead, although he claimed he didn't intend to kill her and that it happened accidentally. After the incident happened, Todd attempted to revive his wife, but she was already dead. In shock, he attempted to clean the crime scene by washing away the blood, but he realized it was futile and called 911. The detectives doubted his account as there were many inconsistencies. It was absurd that he took the kids to the neighbor's house, while Rachel sat calmly waiting for him to return after the brawl. Why didn't she use the opportunity to escape? At 10:30, Todd took the children to a neighbor and then called the police immediately. The medical examiner concluded that Rachel died 6 hours before his 911 call, which contradicted his entire story. During the autopsy, Rachel was found to have multiple injuries, including broken ribs and numerous abrasions. She had cuts and puncture wounds mostly on her face and neck, with the fatal wound being a penetrating cut to the jugular vein. She bled to death in several minutes and had defensive cuts and injuries on her arms and body, indicating she resisted. She was not drunk, having only consumed a little alcohol. Her injuries indicated a brutal attack. Detectives investigating the case learned of the death of Todd's second wife, Catherine. However, they decided to re-examine the case. Catherine's death was initially ruled as a car accident. However, investigators developed new suspicions and decided to review the case. On the day of Catherine's death, in September 1999, her family had gone for a hike in the forest. Todd was stung by a bee and started having severe allergies. So, he urgently needed medical attention. Then, she drove their pickup truck, while he lay in the back seat, heading towards the closest hospital. Unfortunately, she lost control, causing the vehicle to tumble down a mountain. She died in the crash, but he survived. He managed to get out of the car and sought help. Tourists in the national forest heard the crash and came to help him. Todd claimed that the adrenaline released during the accident cleared up all traces of the allergy, which seemed suspicious from the start. When the police arrived at the accident scene, the entire area was engulfed in flames. Rescuers couldn't immediately descend due to the steep slope, they had to use special equipment and ropes. It was puzzling how Todd managed to climb to the mountain summit without Haya. Despite the hot weather, he was wearing winter clothing, which he blamed on chills and fever from an insect bite. Although he claimed to have been in the car with Catherine, he had no injuries, not even a scratch. This was hard to believe, given the severity of the accident. He explained that he was thrown from the pickup truck and his winter clothes protected him. He couldn't remember the location of the insect bite due to fear, and doctors found no evidence of a bite. He believed Catherine was driving too fast, which caused her to lose control. Catherine's autopsy revealed that smoke inhalation and thermal burns caused her death. Her body was completely burned, making it difficult to determine the extent of her injuries. Additionally, a medical examination found no signs of foul play. After an investigation, the death of Todd's second wife, Catherine, was ruled an accident. Todd received over $1 million from her life insurance policy. Following her death, he cut all ties with her friends and relatives, who suspected him of staging her death for financial gain. They thought his story was too implausible, and their suspicions strengthened when they learned about Rachel's death, they believing Catherine had been murdered. In October 2012, Todd Winkler was on trial for murdering Rachel. His story changed with each interrogation, similar to his inconsistencies after Catherine's death. It is believed that he planned Rachel's murder very carefully. At that time, Rachel's father, Don Hatfield, was granted full custody of her child. He saw this as a chance to make up for past mistakes and to rebuild the family he had once destroyed. Don believed that Todd killed Rachel not because of her affair, nor because of their impending divorce, but because she knew his secrets and had threatened to expose them, so he silenced her permanently. According to relatives, Todd had been violent towards Rachel's in the past. For instance, her brother witnessed Todd attack her on she by the defendant in a San Diego bar in 2006. She also told her relatives that if anything bad happened to her, it would be because of her husband. She felt he was dangerous. Rachel's eldest daughter shared a noteworthy family incident. One day, Rachel discovered a box containing the ashes of Catherine in a closet. She remarked that she hoped she would never become ashes, and he responded by saying that she should just never make him angry. This exchange left the daughters and Rachel feeling uneasy. During the trial, it was revealed that Todd had previously attempted to harm Rachel. While they were scuba diving on vacation in Florida, he supposedly left her alone, causing Rachel to struggle to reach the boat and almost drown. Later, he reportedly tried to push her off a motorcycle. However, these accounts were unverified and based on stories Rachel told her friends, which she often exaggerated. It was confirmed that Todd had mental disorders, diagnosed with dissociative and conversion disorder, which can cause a break from reality. Despite this, psychiatrists considered him mentally fit. Then, he emphasized his mental health issues to try to lessen his sentence. One day in court, he even feigned psychosis, but this tactic failed. The prosecution argued that Todd committed a premeditated murder. According to the prosecutor, he took scissors, entered the bedroom while his wife was asleep, and killed her. He then had 6 hours to stage a fight, inflict defensive wounds on himself, bandage those wounds, eliminate unnecessary evidence, feed the children, and take them to a neighbor. Only after doing all this did he call 911. Blood stains found on the children's food plates showed that he had prepared breakfast for them after killing their mother. Later, Todd admitted that he did not call emergency services immediately. The timeline he provided did not match the facts. He claimed he took the children to a neighbor before killing his wife and calling for help, but his wife had already been dead for several hours. Additionally, he would not have had enough time to bandage his hands so quickly and precisely. On the other hand, the defense lawyer argued that the murder was an act of self-defense. Rachel was the one who attacked her husband first. She first grabbed the scissors and attacked he. A struggle ensued, and he realized it was a matter of life or death, choosing to save himself. The jury deliberated for 13 days on the case details and testimonies before reaching a guilty verdict. They convicted 47-year-old Todd Winkler of first-degree murder. In December 2014, he was sentenced to 26 years in prison, with eligibility for parole in June 2031, when he will be 64 years old. Todd has filed many appeals, but all of which have been rejected. However, he has managed to secure better conditions for himself in prison. He is serving his sentence at San Quentin State Prison in California. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Chad Amelia. Chad Amelia was born in 1992 in Santa Clara, California, USA. His parents, of Irish descent, married young and then moved to the United States. They were eager to pursue the American dream, a common goal for millions. When they arrived in the United States, they found themselves isolated in a foreign country, with no one nearby to support them. Communication with relatives was only possible by phone. Despite the distance, the couple and their children remained determined and did not return to Ireland. Chad grew up with his younger brother Shane. They got along and supported each other from a young age. Following the example of their parents, difficulties shaped their characters, making them kind and fair. Both boys were always ready to help others in need. Chad, the eldest, was especially hardworking. He played baseball and football in high school, and when a coach noticed his talent, he was given a spot on the school team. This opportunity fueled his passion for sports, and he became a talented football player. After graduating from high school, he attended California State University, Chicago, graduating in 2018. Soon after, he joined Camarilla, an accounting firm. At the same time, he continued his studies in economics to improve his accounting skills. Known for being sociable and kind, Chad easily connects with people. One spring day in 2018, 20-year-old Chad was walking his dog in the park when he unexpectedly met Bryn Spetcher, a smart, friendly, and determined 27-year-old girl. Like Chad, Bryn is from Chicago, Illinois. She moved to Washington when she was older, making some changes to pursue her education and find a good job. Bryn was born with hearing problems and was nearly deaf from a young age, forcing her to wear a hearing aid. This made her feel out of place in the educational environment, leading to various challenges. However, it also fueled her desire to help others, as she tried to maintain a positive attitude. Despite the difficulties of moving to California, Bryn earned a degree in audiology, a significant accomplishment that she had long pursued. Her career was just beginning, and she quickly secured a position as an audiologist at a hospital in Los Angeles. She wanted to help others who, like her, faced hearing challenges. Bryn lived in California for about a year but was not sociable and often took time off from work, so she did not have a wide circle of acquaintances, communicating only with a few friends with whom she could spend weekends. Chad changed her life dramatically. They started talking and quickly realized that they had many common interests. Chad was very fond of his smart and attractive girlfriend. He often talked about her to his friends, and he expressed his happiness. She seemed pleased too, eager to share stories about him with her friends. They seemed like the perfect couple, visiting each other often. On May 27, 2018, Bryn went to her boyfriend's house, bringing along her beloved service dog, a husky guide dog. Her boyfriend, Chad, also had a dog, and the two animals got along well. The following weekend, about a month later, Bryn was planning a business trip to another city, so she wanted to spend some time relaxing with her Chad before the trip. And Chad lived in the Tarzana Oaks area of California. That evening, one of Chad's neighbors, a guy named Vinny, returned home around 2 a.m. He spent about half an hour with Chad and Bryn, who were watching their favorite TV series. Vinny then went to sleep in his room, while another neighbor slept, using earplugs and sleeping pills. That night, Bryn and Chad decided to smoke marijuana. In California, marijuana use is legal, having been legalized in 1996. Chad took a few breaths and quickly relaxed. Bryn at first, she didn't feel anything, so she tried again. This time, she felt terrible. Her mind went blank, her vision blurred, and she had trouble breathing. She told her boyfriend, who went into the kitchen to get her some water. She felt so bad that she feared for her life and asked Chad to stay with her. Chad, who had used before, didn't have the same problems and was calm enough to support her. Bryn admits that she thought she was going to die. She began hallucinating about dying in pain and felt like she wouldn't survive the night. She was angry at her boyfriend because he seemed fine and suspected that he was setting her up. In her hallucinations, he became the bad guy who orchestrated her death through drug use. She also heard voices in her head urging her to kill him, and Bryn realized that the only way she could survive was to get rid of her boyfriend. Suddenly, she stood up and went into the kitchen, where she picked up a large knife. Bryn returned to the living room, where Chad was still lying on the couch. She stabbed him multiple times in the chest. At that moment, she heard voices urging her to continue stabbing. She couldn't resist them because she felt out of control. Bryn experienced a fierce cruelty and aggression she had never felt before. The hallucinations continued, and with each stab, she felt relief. Meanwhile, the neighbors were in other rooms on the second floor. One was fast asleep and didn't hear anything. The second neighbor, Vinny, heard some rustling from downstairs, but there was no loud noise or screaming, so he didn't think much of it. Vinny assumed the couple was watching TV. After a while, he heard Chad's voice asking Bryn to leave him alone and call for help. The voice got louder and more frightening, which scared Vinny. To find out what was going on, he started going down from the first floor. When he walked in, the first thing he noticed was the frightened dogs. When he entered the room, he saw the furniture scattered everywhere. In the living room, Bryn had a knife in her hand, covered in blood. Chad lay there, wheezing, his eyes wide with horror as he looked at Vinny. Chad's hand was slashed by her, defenseless, but Bryn, in her frenzy, stabbed him with a kitchen knife. A large gash across his chest that Bryn continued to attack with a look of fury on her face. Vinny yelled at her to stop, but instead, Bryn turned to look at him with a blank expression. She was still holding the knife. Feeling the danger, Vinny quickly went upstairs and knocked on the second neighbor's door to warn him. However, the neighbor was fast asleep and did not respond. So Vinny grabbed his cell phone and ran downstairs. Fearing for his life, he ran out onto the street and quickly called 911. Once outside, Vinny used his phone to call emergency services. His screams attracted the attention of the neighbors, who ran out to see what was going on, making Vinny feel safer. He started banging on the windows and shouting for the girl to stop. The neighbors, seeing the situation inside the house, also started shouting. Everyone was scared and shocked. Meanwhile, inside the apartment, Bryn continued to attack Chad, not paying attention to the commotion outside. Within minutes, the police met Vinny, who was sobbing about the events that were happening. He could only point to the apartment where the violent attack was taking place. The police rushed into the house to intervene. In the living room, they found Bryn repeatedly stabbing a young man in the chest. The room was covered in blood, and although the young man showed no signs of life, Bryn did not stop. The police considered using force to end the attack. However, when ordered to drop the knife, Bryn began stabbing herself in the neck. The police quickly used a stun gun, but it was ineffective. Bryn continued to harm herself, so the police used a baton to disarm her. It took 9 blows to knock the knife out of her hand, even breaking her arm in several places, but she seemed completely unaware of the injuries. Only then did Bryn drop the knife. In addition to stabbing Chad, she also stabbed her dog several times. When other rescue services arrived, everyone was shocked by the horrific scene, which looked like a bloodbath. Doctors tried to resuscitate Vinny, but he was in shock and could not remember or explain what had happened in the house. The experience had a profound effect on him and he needed a long recovery period with the help of psychologists. The dog was treated at a veterinary clinic and eventually recovered from his injuries. Unfortunately, by the time the police arrived, Chad was dead. There was a lot of blood from the stab wound and witnesses to the incident were present. These witnesses were neighbors who had come out of the house when they heard screams. They described what they saw to the police, but could not understand how such a brutal attack could have happened or what had provoked it. Chad had 108 stab wounds, most of them concentrated around the heart and neck. Some of the wounds were superficial and not life-threatening, while others penetrated vital organs. It is difficult to determine which specific wound caused Chad's death. He also had multiple self-defense wounds. Bryn after self-inflicted wounds to her neck. She was rushed to the hospital, where she was placed on a ventilator and intubated. When police tried to communicate with her, they used only a piece of paper and a pen, as she was unable to fully respond because of the life support equipment. Once she was stabilized in the hospital, she was able to communicate fully. Various tests showed traces of mild substances in her blood. Doctors noted that the levels were very low and did not pose a threat to her life or mental health. It is unusual for such a small amount to cause such an extreme reaction. However, doctors did not rule out the possibility that her blood levels had dropped. When Bryn spoke to the police, she claimed that she did not remember anything that had happened. As a result, she did not know where Chad was or what had happened to him. She believed that her injuries may have been caused by an assault with the intent to rape her. In addition to the neck injury, she also suffered a broken neck and a bludgeoned arm, which was how the police safely disarmed her of the knife. However, she did not remember the event either. Bryn could not believe the police account of how she attacked and stabbed her boyfriend. Despite this, she did not seem to feel remorse for her actions toward Chad. Bryn refused to comment further and immediately requested a lawyer, as she considered herself innocent and blamed the incident on the effects of drugs. The last thing she remembered was being discharged from the hospital after 4 days, on May 31st, when she was immediately arrested for Chad's murder. Eventually, she was able to share a more detailed account of the events of that tragic night. Bryn recounted her story. She had gone to visit her boyfriend with a dog and they watched TV together. Around 10:30 p.m., when Chad stepped outside to smoke, she joined him, saying she wanted to try it too. She then began to feel unwell, hallucinating and hearing voices in her head. Bryn had difficulty breathing, felt disoriented and nauseous. She then had a hallucination blaming Chad for her condition. The hallucination urged her to kill Chad, claiming it was the only way to stop her bad feelings. Although she initially resisted, the hallucinations grew stronger. Feeling like she was going to die, Bryn attacked Chad with a knife but insisted that she had no control at the time, claiming she was innocent. When the police arrived, the hallucinations told her to harm herself. She complied with these voices. Bryn insisted that she could not resist because the voices in her head had complete control over her. She could not even drop the knife when the police asked her to, until they broke her arm. Bryn believed that she was suffering from drug-induced psychosis at the time. She was eventually charged with first-degree murder, but she pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Preliminary hearings took place and her bail was set at $500,000, which she paid, allowing her to await trial at home. During this time, the police continued to investigate and Bryn's attorney repeatedly requested adjournments. And Chad's murder trial was set for October 23, 2023, but a new district attorney took office a month earlier, causing further delays. The trial finally began on November 9, 2023. The new prosecutor reduced her charges to manslaughter, which shocked the victim's family. They could not understand how someone could accidentally stab the victim more than 100 times. Remarkably, all of this took so long that Chad's mother did not live to see the trial and never saw justice. She passed away in 2020. The court psychiatrist concluded that Bryn suffered from a psychotic disorder caused by smoking. This decision was supported by other experts, and according to the prosecution, they did not have enough evidence to refute this conclusion. During the trial, Chad's family insisted that it was a deliberate massacre and demanded punishment. The defense argued that Bryn's behavior showed signs of psychosis. She was not aware of her actions, first stabbing her boyfriend and then hitting him multiple times. A police officer using a stun gun was unable to stop her, and they were only able to take the knife away after breaking her arm with 9 blows from her baton. This behavior showed that she was psychotic. However, according to Bryn, she understood what was happening. She remembered everything and claimed that she saw the murder as the only way to survive. She was aware of her actions and made her own decisions, despite experiencing hallucinations. Her arguments were strongly opposed by her attorneys. As a result, the defense continued to delay the trial, which lasted for 5 years. The main issues in dispute were whether there was intent to kill Chad and whether Bryn used the drug voluntarily. Under California law, a person can be held responsible for such crimes while under the influence of drugs or alcohol if it can be proven that the use was voluntary. If the drug was coerced, the killing is considered unintentional. This must be proven. The prosecution pointed to numerous letters from the girl, in which Bryn repeatedly told friends that she had been drinking. She also mentioned smoking occasionally, suggesting that this was not her first time using. The prosecution argued that on the day Chad was killed, she also used the drug voluntarily, as she had done before. Many colleagues defended Bryn, describing her as a very responsible person. She had no criminal record and no one could testify that she was capable of causing such a psychotic episode. However, this claim seems dubious, given her medical history, which should have made her aware of the potential consequences. She defended herself by saying that she was unsure what drugs her boyfriend had smoked and given her that night and believed he had given them to her intentionally. No other drugs were found in his home. Bryn's parents defended her, claiming that she had no romantic relationship with Chad and that she was acting in self-defense against harassment. They attempted to portray her as a heroine. However, friends on both sides disagreed, saying that Chad and Bryn had been together for nearly 2 months, had an intimate relationship, and that everyone knew about it. Chad's relatives denied any allegations of violence against him. They described him as respectful of women and noted that although he had a smoking habit, which his parents had advised him to quit, it was legal and had never caused any problems. They insisted he was not aggressive, so they did not believe he would attack his girlfriend. Throughout the trial, Bryn showed no remorse for what had happened. The only time she cried was when the brutal details of her arrest were described. She could recall the intense pain of being beaten with a baton. The case was complex, controversial, and attracted considerable public attention. Many were puzzled as to how a seemingly kind-hearted girl, dedicated to helping others, could commit a brutal murder. The jury then deliberated on the verdict. The jury then found Bryn Spejcher, 32, guilty of manslaughter. Bryn showed emotion for the second time during the trial. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. At that point, she was focused only on her sentence. She did not care that she had caused serious harm to her loved one. Bryn simply did not want to take responsibility for her actions. Chad's father spoke to reporters, expressing his frustration with the justice system's decision, which he considered unfair. He also pointed to inconsistencies in Bryn's testimony. She contradicted herself. For example, she initially described her boyfriend as a nice young man who was easy to talk to. However, when the subject of smoking was brought up, Bryn admitted that she had always been afraid of him and then began to deny that they had a relationship. Chad's father said that Bryn did not want to take responsibility for her terrible actions and tried to blame Chad for the bloody massacre to reduce her sentence. The father could not believe that the court would seriously consider that a person could accidentally inflict more than 100 wounds on another person. His son's death was not simple or painless. Chad had suffered a lot, and now the killer was trying to blame him with lies. During the trial, the prosecution argued that Bryn smoked of her own free will, and Chad had never forced her to take drugs when she did not like them. However, psychiatric experts confirmed that Bryn's psychosis was caused by the drug. This was one of the first cases where a voluntary user was justified in using drugs. And while awaiting the verdict, the girl was released on bail. On January 24, 2024, Bryn Spetscher was sentenced to 2 years of probation in order to complete 100 hours of community service. The judge justified the lenient sentence by stating that Bryn was not in control of his actions during a psychotic episode, making a reduced sentence appropriate. The attorney applauded the court's decision, calling it the right thing to do. However, Chad's father was unhappy with the ruling, arguing that the judge had set a dangerous precedent. He said the decision implied that marijuana users in California were being given a license to kill. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Daniel Wozniak. Costa Mesa, California, is located between Los Angeles and San Diego on a coastal plateau overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Despite being an affluent area, it still retains the laid-back atmosphere of a beach town. No one expected this picturesque location to be the site of Julie Kibushi's tragic fate. Sam Har's parents, Stephen and Raquel, were worried when they realized they hadn't heard from him in a while. Sam was scheduled to visit them that weekend, but he never arrived. On May 22, 2010, his parents Stephen and Raquel went to Sam's apartment. When they arrived, they witnessed a horrifying scene. Stephen, in a panic, quickly called 911. During the call, he informed the police that there was a dead woman lying face down in his son's bedroom, her clothes partially torn and blood dripping from her forehead. "Do you know where your son is?" the dispatcher asked. "No, I don't," came the reply. But there was no sign of Sam anywhere. The case shocked the Costa Mesa community, where homicides are extremely rare. When police arrived at the apartment, they found no evidence of a struggle. The apartment was neat and showed no signs of a struggle. The space contained typical bachelor items like empty beer bottles, used cigarettes, and an outdoor grill, all of which were relatively clean and tidy. Until they entered the bedroom. In the bedroom, police found an unused knife on the nightstand and several books, including a fighting manual and another titled The Wonders of Sex. The most alarming discovery, however, was on the bed. It was covered in the victim's blood. The dead woman was lying partly on the bed and partly on the floor, her pants down, exposing her lower body. Police believe she may have been sexually assaulted before her death. She died of 2 gunshot wounds to the head, one to the top of her head. Although there was a knife on the nightstand, it did not appear to have been used. Curiously, she was wearing a crown, and the back of her sweater read, "All yours." Her purse was in the kitchen, and her driver's license identified the victim as 23-year-old Julie Kibushi. Julie was born on Valentine's Day 1987 to Japanese-American parents June and Masa Kibushi. She was the third of their 4 children. Her parents often called her "my Valentine girl." From an early age, Julie developed a strong interest in dance and music. Her mother said that Julie started tap dancing at the age of 5 and her passion for the sport continued to grow over the years. According to her friends and family, she was a very cheerful person. Her cheerful and bubbly personality brought laughter to everyone. She radiated positivity and often helped her friends when they were in trouble. While respecting her Japanese heritage, she also pursued a free-spirited, all-American lifestyle. After graduating from the Orange County School of the Arts, Julie pursued fashion design at Orange Coast Community College. There, she formed a close relationship with 26-year-old Sam Har and even tutored him in anthropology. Little did she know that her kindness would eventually lead to her tragic fate. As the police investigated the crime scene, they attempted to discover what happened to this energetic young woman, Julie. The evidence clearly pointed to Sam as her killer. Since she was found in his apartment and he was now missing, the police needed to dig deeper into Sam Har's life. Sam Har was born on May 29, 1983, in Los Angeles, California, to Stephen and Raquel Kalberman. As an only child, he received a lot of affection from his parents. His father was a special education teacher while his mother stayed home. Sam had a close relationship with his parents and visited them often. Sam was large and athletic, and friends described him as a big teddy bear. As a child, he enlisted in the United States Army, serving a tour of duty in both Afghanistan and Germany with the 173rd Airborne Division. After 3 years of service, he was discharged and returned to Southern California to take advantage of the GI Bill and finish college. Sam aimed to finish college and then re-enlist in the Army as an officer. Sam enrolled in Orange Coast Community College there. He became friends with Julie, who was 3 years younger than him. However, after 3 years in the Army, Sam developed PTSD, a common condition among veterans. Police wondered if he had lost control and committed the crime in a moment of intense emotion. When Julie was found dead in Sam's apartment and he was missing, detectives suspected that he had fled the scene after the murder. The situation became more suspicious when they discovered text messages on Julie's phone from Sam. At around 2:45 p.m. on May 21, 2010, Sam texted Julie to say he was going to help a friend and then come to his parents' house. However, just 2 hours later, his text messages changed. He contacted her multiple times, begging her to come over. The urgency in his messages made it clear that something was wrong. Concerned about her friend, Julie agreed to visit him, expressing her willingness to support him as family. Sam's messages showed that he had planned her visit. Furthermore, Sam's car and passport were missing from the apartment, leading the police to suspect that he was trying to evade arrest. With both his passport and car missing, it seemed that Sam would soon be identified as the killer. However, the police would soon discover that the situation was more complicated than it appeared. Back in 2002, when Sam was 18, he was charged with the murder along with 17 others in the stabbing and beating death of 19-year-old Byron Benito in Canyon Country. On January 15, 2002, Sam, who had known Byron since childhood, picked him up and took him to a location behind a mobile home park where a group of suspected gang members attacked and killed Byron. Although Sam was charged with murder, he was eventually acquitted, but this did not ease the police's suspicions of him. Sam's family believes in his innocence, but the police believe they are after the right suspect. Since Sam is trained in the use of firearms, he will be armed. Fearing that they are dealing with a dangerous criminal, the police issue a warrant for Sam's arrest. Meanwhile, Costa Mesa police begin monitoring Sam's cell phone and credit card transactions to find him. They learn that he has made 4 ATM withdrawals since his disappearance. Additionally, his credit card was used at a pizza delivery restaurant in Long Beach, California, just 20 miles from Sam's home. The police hoped to find Sam on surveillance footage, but when the bank provided the ATM recording, they were shocked to see a teenager in a hoodie and baseball cap withdrawing money from Sam's bank account. Neither the police nor Sam's parents were able to identify the teenager. Police believe he may be helping Sam escape or hide. Costa Mesa police are eager to find him. On May 26, 2010, police learned that Sam's credit card had been used at another pizza delivery service and began tracking the delivery driver. After obtaining the delivery address, they rushed to the location, thinking they had finally found Sam's hideout. However, when police raided the home, they did not find Sam, but instead found 17-year-old Wesley Freelich and several of his friends. Despite being suspected, police immediately ruled Wesley out as a suspect, but he still had Sam's credit card on him. Wesley shared a surprising story that police did not expect. He revealed that he had received a credit card with instructions to withdraw cash, but that the card was not given to him by Sam, and he said Daniel Wozniak, a local stage actor Wesley met through community theater, had given him a credit card. Daniel claimed to be a bail bondsman who needed to collect money that Sam owed. While most people might have refused, Wesley saw Daniel as a brother and, not realizing the severity of the situation, agreed to help. In total, $1,900 was withdrawn from the account. Daniel Wozniak's name came to the attention of the police when they discovered an invitation to Daniel's upcoming wedding in Sam's apartment. But who is Daniel really, and what is his relationship to Sam? Did he help Sam escape, or was he involved in the murder? Many questions remain unanswered. Daniel Wozniak, born March 23, 1984, is the youngest of 3 brothers. Because his parents worked long hours, he spent a lot of time with his grandparents after school. Growing up in a wealthy family, Daniel and his family often went on lavish vacations. He was considered a good student at school, getting top grades most of the time. He used pranks, singing, dancing, and magic tricks to attract people's attention. He loved being the center of attention. Realizing that he had a talent for performing on stage, Daniel began acting and singing in musicals in his early 20s. He was quite open-minded about his plans for the future, but was never able to hold down a job for long, forcing him to move from job to job with very low pay. However, he kept his passion for acting and continued to participate in theater. It was in one of these musicals that he met his dream partner, an actress. After a short period of dating, they decided to marry on May 26, 2010. The police found Daniel while he was celebrating his bachelor party in Huntington Beach, California. He was related to Sam Hart because they lived in the same apartment complex. The police suspected that Daniel may have helped Sam escape or hide, or that he was involved in Julie's murder. With an arrest warrant in hand, the police interrupted Daniel's bachelor party. His expression changed when he saw the police, and they took him into custody for questioning. In the interrogation room, Wozniak initially claimed that his only crime was participating in credit card fraud and covering up for Sam. He explained to the police that he and Sam had planned to drain his bank account with Wesley's help and then claimed that he had stolen the credit cards. However, Daniel claimed that before they could carry out their plan, Sam made a shocking confession. He added that after this confession, he dropped Sam off at a local shopping mall and had not seen him since. However, the police believed that he was still covering for Sam and that he had more to do with Julie's murder than he had told them. The police changed their approach by taking a DNA sample from Daniel, which made him appear nervous. As he tried to remain calm, the police sensed that something was wrong. Almost immediately, he began adding more details to his statement. The police asked, "Can you explain what happened to Sam?" Daniel replied, "I told him I needed to move some objects in the theater. I said, 'Lift this up,' and as he bent down, I grabbed the gun. I had never fired a gun before, so I pulled the trigger and shot him." The police realized that Daniel is worried that his DNA might be found at Sam's apartment, despite his attempts to downplay the issue. Under pressure, he continually changes his story. After a brief silence, Daniel says that he knows about Julie's murder and that he helped Sam escape. When the police remind him that they have his DNA, he insists that it does not match anything on Julie's body, insisting that he had nothing to do with the murder. The police expect him to share more information, but he abruptly decides to end the interview. Knowing the seriousness of the situation, the police press him for more information, warning that he will be arrested for accessory to murder if he does not come clean and give them full details. Daniel also has a lot at stake. He has a wedding scheduled in just 48 hours and he does not want to miss it. Under pressure, he began to collapse, causing the situation to change. The police, noticing his distress, rushed into questioning by falsely claiming that they had found his DNA on Julie's body. In reality, it took weeks for the DNA test results to come back, but Daniel did not dispute this claim. Instead, he explained that his DNA was present because he had been right above her. When his fabrications were exposed, he made a startling confession. This alarmed the police because initially only one gunshot wound was found at the crime scene. It was only after an autopsy that a second gunshot wound was discovered. Daniel's confession meant that he had been present when she was killed, making him an accomplice to the murder, allowing the police to formally arrest him. Even though Daniel was in custody, the police still needed to locate Sam, and Daniel remained silent as they searched for clues about Sam. While in prison, Daniel called his fiancée, Rachel Buffett. When Rachel chose freedom over love, she told him that she would speak to the police about the case. Daniel knew that he had to talk to the police before Rachel did. Suddenly, he panicked, desperate to reach a deal with the police that he had refused to do just hours before. But what he told the police this time was beyond their imagination. The story begins on May 21, 2010, when Daniel asks Sam to help him with a task, moving some boxes in the attic of a theater at a local military base. While Sam is busy moving the boxes and his back is turned, Daniel suddenly pulls out a gun and shoots Sam in the head. At first, Sam doesn't know what happened, but when he realizes he's been shot, he begs Daniel for help. Without hesitation, Daniel loads the gun and shoots Sam a second time, killing him on the spot. After killing Sam, Daniel proceeds to send Julie messages from Sam's phone, inviting her to Sam's apartment. Without any remorse, he leaves Sam's body in the attic and spends the night laughing, singing, and dancing, as if he hadn't just taken an innocent life. That night, Daniel returns to the apartment and when Julie arrives, he shoots her twice in the head. He then staged the crime scene to make it appear as if Sam had attacked and killed Julie before fleeing. Daniel was also determined to hide Sam's body. In a desperate and gruesome act, he returned to the loft and cut off Sam's hands and head to conceal his identity. He dumped the body in a nearby park. Despite these horrific actions, Daniel returned to the theater as if nothing had happened. Police later found photos from the film's parties showing him laughing and joking with other members of the crew. The motive for these shocking murders was even more disturbing. It was all about money. Daniel had been struggling financially for a long time and was facing eviction, having been 2 months behind on his rent. He also had no way to pay for the lavish wedding and honeymoon he had planned. When Daniel discovers that Sam has $62,000 in savings from his time in the military, he makes the cold-blooded decision to kill 2 innocent people to fund his lavish wedding and vacation. When the police discover the backpack containing the evidence Rachel mentioned to Daniel, it becomes clear just how damaging its contents can be. Daniel's brother, Tim, was told to get rid of the backpack but instead threw it over the fence at their parents' house. The backpack contained a number of incriminating items, including Sam's financial information, passport, bloody clothing, and most importantly, the murder weapon. Daniel's DNA was found on these items, placing him solely responsible for the murders of Julie and Sam. The evidence was overwhelming, including DNA, spent shell casings, and the victim's financial records, everything the prosecutor could possibly need, including the murder weapon itself. On December 16, 2015, after a trial that lasted just 5 days, Daniel Wozniak was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. On January 11, 2016, After just 1 hour of deliberation, one of the shortest death penalty trials ever, the jury recommended the death penalty for Daniel Wozniak. On September 23, 2016, the judge sentenced him to death. It seemed there was no end to the deception in this case. Years later, police discovered that Daniel's ex-fiancée, Rachel Buffett, not only knew about the murder plots, but also lied to the police. Although she denied all charges, she was arrested and charged with 3 felony counts of being an accessory after the fact, based on allegations that she had repeatedly lied to the police. On September 12, 2018, she was convicted of 2 of those charges, carrying a maximum possible sentence of 44 months. On November 8, 2018, she was sentenced to 32 months in prison and was released from prison in about 2019. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Kenneth Keith. Michael Hawkinsmith, 35, was born in Danville, Kentucky. He was a well-known pastor at a local church in his community. After many years of service there, he chose to take a job at a local pawn shop named ABC, while still working part-time as a pastor. Due to health issues faced by the previous owner, Michael eventually took over the pawn shop. Michael was an honest and helpful person, which allowed him to easily build relationships with customers. In his personal life, he was married to Angela, and they had 2 children, Andrew and Naomi. Michael and Angela owned a pawn shop called ABC Gold, Games and More, located in Danville, Kentucky. They homeschooled their 9-year-old son, Andrew, and cared for their newborn daughter, Naomi. Andrew frequently visited the pawn shop and saw it as his play area. On the morning of September 20, 2013, the Hawkinsmiths visited the ABC store as intended. During that morning, Dan Smith, a frequent visitor to the pawn shop, arrived as scheduled. Smith, often referred to as the Gold Man, specialized in trading gold between pawn shops throughout the state. Approximately 15 minutes after the store opened, while Michael and Smith were conducting their business, a bearded man entered the store and instructed everyone to get on the ground, leading to a series of alarming events. Andrew was at the ABC store when his mother, Angela, told him to hide. Sensing the tense situation, he quickly called the police to report what was happening. 6 minutes after the alarm was raised, the police arrived at the murder scene. When they entered the building, they discovered a significant trail of blood that led them to Michael Hawkinsmith. They then found his wife, Angela, 38, and another victim, Dan Smith, 60, a broker, on the opposite side of the counter. All 3 victims had sustained severe injuries from gunshot wounds to their heads and bodies. Police later discovered 9-year-old Andrew and 14-month-old Naomi hiding in a closet. They had endured unimaginable trauma and were left without their parents, becoming orphans. While investigating the crime scene, police discovered 14 spent shell casings and 3 intact bullets, along with a briefcase belonging to Dan Smith. Notably, the victim's personal belongings and all the cash in the register were left untouched, indicating that robbery was not the motive. The investigation was further complicated by the absence of surveillance cameras at the pawn shop, requiring police to look for potential witnesses. An employee from Rainbowy Cleaners, a nearby dry cleaning business, offered crucial information by describing a vehicle that had been parked near the shop that morning. The vehicle involved was a silver pickup truck, driven by a large man with a bushy beard. While one team of investigators searched the area, another team had the difficult task of informing the victim's closest relatives about the tragedy. Michael's parents were heartbroken by the news but felt grateful that their grandchildren, Andrew and Naomi, had survived. The tragic news also reached the daughter of the 3rd victim, Dan Smith. Dan was involved in buying precious metals and was knowledgeable about his field, which helped him connect with various people. His business often required him to handle large sums of cash, sometimes reaching hundreds of thousands of dollars. Police began to suspect that Dan Smith might have been the main target of the criminal. Through surveillance, they learned that before visiting the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop, Dan Smith had stopped at the Lawson Jewelry Store in Harrodsburg, located 10 miles northeast of Danville. Inside the jewelry store, investigators found a surveillance camera installed on the far wall, which recorded every customer who entered and exited. They wanted to see if anyone was following Dan Smith. At 8:16 a.m., Dan Smith entered the store, and there were no other customers present at that time. Dan Smith was seen carrying a briefcase that looked exactly like the one later discovered at the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop. He smiled at the woman working behind the counter and then walked toward the back of the store. A short time later, he came back into view on the footage, talked briefly with an elderly woman who had just walked in, and then left the store quickly. The footage from the exterior camera did not reveal any suspicious activity. The police could only keep an eye on the man, not realizing that he would soon be involved in a tragic incident. Andrew Hawkinsmith was taken to the police station to give his testimony. He explained that he was at the pawn shop with his parents when Dan Smith entered carrying a bag of money. While Michael and Dan were having a conversation, a stranger entered and demanded the bag of money right away. Andrew reported that Dan Smith quickly handed his bag of money to a stranger. He mentioned that his father asked the man to stop, but the man shot his father with a handgun that looked like the one Andrew usually played with. Following this, his mother told him to take his younger sister, Naomi, to the back of the store and hide in the closet. Andrew grabbed his sister and found a hiding spot. At that moment, the criminal aimed a gun at Angela. The 9-year-old boy suspected the stranger was after money. He described the stranger as a very tall man with a fake-looking beard, matching what a witness from Rainbow Cleaners had reported. During their investigation, the police looked closely at the Hawkinsmith family's business. They found out that the ABC Gold Games and More pawn shop was actually owned by Steve Devine. Usually, he was present during transactions on Fridays with Dan Smith, but on the morning of September 20th, he was not there. This absence raised alarms, and finding out where he was became a major priority. Steve Devine reported an allergic reaction that morning, leading him to cancel all his appointments. His wife supported his account. Additionally, his alibi and the absence of a silver pickup truck in his possession helped clear him as a suspect. Steve Devine explained that there were no surveillance cameras in the pawn shop because the previous owner, Kenneth Allen Keith, had removed the security system. The new owner had not yet installed a replacement. Kenneth Allen Keith, 48, is a pastor, just like Michael Hawkinsmith. After being diagnosed with brain cancer, he sold his pawn shop. However, he still owns a similar business called Gold Rush Buyers, located in Pulaski County near Danville's Bowles district. Kenneth and Michael have been friends for 15 years, a bond that started when Michael worked at a church youth camp. The Hawkinsmith family held a deep respect for Pastor Kenneth, who was like a cherished uncle to Andrew. As investigators lacked significant leads, they opted to review the street surveillance footage from around ABC Gold Games and More, as well as several pawn shops. They discovered a camera located on the office building of Danville Rentals, a real estate company. The surveillance video recorded a silver pickup truck at 8:45 a.m., but the footage was too blurry to identify the license plate or the make of the vehicle. However, eyewitness testimony from Rainbow Cleaners was crucial in helping the police identify the vehicle involved. The witness noted that the vehicle was an older model with a unique square body shape. The video evidence also clearly displayed a square rear bumper that matched this description. The color, type, and shape of the vehicle indicated that the police may have located the criminal's vehicle. They then expanded their search to surveillance systems further away from the pawn shop. At 8:17 a.m., cameras at Ephraim McDowell Hospital recorded the same vehicle. Investigators confirmed that it was a silver Dodge pickup truck. Dan Smith's family was heartbroken by his death. Though they were filled with sadness, they attended the funeral and managed to control their anger. Meanwhile, the Danville police appealed to the public for any information about the crime or the vehicle involved. On September 24th, the police received a call from Tracy Hurl, a pastor from Warren, Michigan. He said he was a friend of Kenneth Keith and mentioned that during their last conversation, they talked about the Danville murders. During that conversation, Kenneth seemed different. Pastor Kenneth told Tracy that he was driving to Danville that day to get medication for his wife. Kenneth also expressed feelings of guilt about the situation, as he had allowed Michael Hawkinsmith to take over his former business. It became clear that Kenneth's relationship with the Hawkinsmith family was not as people had perceived. Tracy reported a conversation with Kenneth in which Kenneth accused Michael of being a fraud and claimed that Michael tried to take over his business. This raised suspicions and led to Kenneth being considered a suspect. To confirm Kenneth's alibi, investigators planned to check the surveillance footage from Good Neighbor Pharmacy, where Kenneth stated he bought medication for his wife at 9:24 a.m. Surveillance footage shows that Kenneth entered the pharmacy. However, just a few minutes before, he was not wearing a green jacket or a beard, which are significant features of a suspect. This does not eliminate the possibility that Kenneth could still be involved in the attack. Notably, there was a 6-minute interval between Andrew Hawkinsmith's call to the police and Kenneth's arrival at the pharmacy. The police investigated whether it was feasible to travel from the crime scene to Good Neighbor Pharmacy in just a few minutes. They determined that the trip took approximately 5 minutes, suggesting that Kenneth could have committed the murder, quickly driven to the pharmacy, and created a convincing alibi. Additionally, a key piece of evidence was that Kenneth owned a silver, unregistered 2008 Dodge pickup truck. All the evidence gathered was circumstantial and insufficient for an arrest. As a result, the investigators asked Tracy Hurl to take part in a series of staged phone calls targeting Kenneth. Thankfully, Tracy agreed to help. During these calls, Kenneth eventually expressed his real feelings about the Hawkinsmith family. Everyone had been anticipating this moment. Kenneth started talking about details of the case that had not been revealed before. He stated that he was in Danville, specifically at the pharmacy. He confirmed that he was at the pharmacy during the events in question. Kenneth then clarified that he had left Danville and gone back to Somerset. After that, he drove to the car wash to get ready for a planned family vacation. At 10:50 a.m., camera footage recorded Kenneth walking down the hallway to the cash register with a clear smile on his face. Additional footage from outside the building captured Pastor Kenneth leaving the car wash in the same silver Dodge at 11:25 a.m., which aligns with earlier images from various surveillance cameras in Danville. At that stage, police had sufficient evidence to arrest Kenneth. However, when they proposed a lie detector test to determine his involvement in the case, he responded oddly. He stated that he wouldn't be able to pass the test because, during his military service, he had been involved in special missions where he had killed several individuals. Investigators carried out a search warrant at Kenneth's pawn shop and uncovered crucial evidence. They found a fake beard and a large amount of cash, but there was no legal explanation for how he acquired it. Notably, they also discovered bundles of money tied with a ribbon, labeled with the name of the bank that issued them, suggesting that Dan Smith was a customer. Further investigation showed that the money found in Keith's pawn shop had recently been withdrawn from the account of a deceased broker, raising suspicions about his involvement. Moreover, investigators discovered several .22 caliber shell casings in the pawn shop. Ballistic analysis confirmed that these casings were fired from the same type of weapon used to shoot Andrew and Naomi's parents. Kenneth Allen Keith faced 3 charges: first-degree murder, 3 counts, and robbery. He thought that Michael and Steve were plotting to oust him from the business. Despite his beliefs, there was no evidence to support that Michael and Steve were involved in any conspiracy. When Kenneth met Dan Smith at the pawn shop, he attempted to devise a fake scheme to convince the police that the case was a robbery. However, the plan backfired when the police investigated and found no evidence of any wrongdoing by Michael and Steve. On September 20th, Kenneth drove his silver Dodge Caravan to Danville. He drove around the pawn shop until he spotted Dan Smith's car parked nearby. Kenneth then shot and killed Dan Smith, Michael Hawkinsmith, and Angela Hawkinsmith. After stealing all the cash, Kenneth calmly left the scene of the crime and went to the Good Neighbor Pharmacy. This visit was recorded by surveillance cameras, which helped him create a false alibi. Kenneth chose to wash his car in what seems to be an effort to eliminate any possible evidence that could be on it. Before his sentencing in 2017, Kenneth Allen Keith admitted guilt to all charges brought against him and was consequently sentenced to life in prison. In reflecting on the tragic events surrounding the Hawkinsmith family and Dan Smith, it's clear that this story resonates deeply with many. The heartbreak felt by the community underscores the fragility of trust, especially when betrayal comes from those we consider friends. As the investigation unraveled the chilling motives of Kenneth Allen Keith, it served as a poignant reminder of how quickly a normal day can transform into a nightmare. The innocence of the children, caught in such horrific circumstances, evokes a sense of profound empathy and admiration for their resilience. Furthermore, this case highlights the essential need for safety measures in our communities, reminding us of the importance of vigilance and awareness in our everyday lives. While the final sentencing brought some sense of justice, the emotional scars left on the families and the broader community will linger long after. Ultimately, may we take these lessons to heart, cherishing our loved ones and fostering a spirit of compassion and understanding in the face of unimaginable sorrow. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Heather Maples. Heather Maples, just 22 years old, has just started college, settled into a job, and feels life is full of promise. She radiates warmth and energy, and is always helpful to those around her. On the morning of August 7, 2015, Heather's co-worker Kelsey Price arrived at her real estate brokerage firm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and began her daily routine. Heather had not yet arrived at work, which did not surprise Kelsey, as Heather was notorious for being late. Kelsey began calling Heather to wake her up but received no response. The night before, Heather had planned to go to a bar with some friends and had asked Kelsey to pick her up if she overslept or did not answer the phone. Kelsey was not concerned and went to Heather's apartment to wake her up. The girls' apartments were in the same complex where they worked. When Kelsey arrived, she found the front door unlocked. When she entered, she found her friend Heather lying on the bed, sleeping on her stomach, wearing only a crop top and no underwear. Thinking that Heather had been partying the night before, Kelsey tried to wake her but received no response. She gently tapped Heather's leg to wake her up, but when she touched it, she was shocked to find it was ice cold. Terrified, Kelsey walked out of the apartment and called 911. Emergency services arrived quickly, with police officer Tommy Massey being one of the first to arrive on the scene, followed by a forensic team who thoroughly examined the apartment. They found that Heather was partially undressed and had bruises on her face. The poor girl's hair was bloody, and blood was also splattered on the walls. It was clear that she had been brutally beaten, tortured, and sexually assaulted. Heather Maples was born on August 23, 1992 in Ocala, Florida. Her mother affectionately called Heather her "Storm Baby," a nickname that perfectly reflected her energy and courage. In 2004, Heather's mother, Jennifer Hunter, welcomed her second child, a son named Ryan. Heather happily embraced her new role as a big sister, however Ryan was later diagnosed with developmental delays. Heather devoted all of her free time to her brother, teaching him to talk, walk, and feed himself. Heather was in 7th grade at the time and spent the following years until Ryan's graduation with her, showing her endless love and devotion to her younger brother. At 22, Heather Maples decided to leave her hometown in Texas and start a new chapter in Tennessee to pursue her dream of becoming a psychologist. Her journey began when her old classmate Chaz called her and invited her to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, where he was a student. He described it as the perfect small town for Heather, offering her a great opportunity to prepare for college. Heather agreed and moved to Murfreesboro in January 2015. Soon after arriving, her friendship with Chaz blossomed into a romantic relationship, launching her into a new phase of her life. With the help of her best friend Kelsey, Heather got a job at the office of the housing complex where they lived. Heather was trying to balance her work and preparing for college. She had the support of her friends and family, and things seemed to be going well. However, her relationship with Chaz began to deteriorate, eventually leading to their breakup and Chaz moving out. In early August, she called her mother excitedly to share the great news: she had been accepted to college. Her mother was extremely proud of Heather's achievements. However, a week later, Heather did not show up for work, causing concern among those around her. The police realized that given the nature of the crime, it could be related to Heather's personal life. At the time, most of her friends were considered potential suspects, and there was good reason for this suspicion. After searching the apartment, the police found no signs of forced entry. This suggested that Heather may have known the attackers and may have let them in. During the investigation, several key pieces of evidence were discovered, including unidentified DNA and a hair that did not belong to Heather. These samples were sent for analysis to help identify the suspect. The most important evidence was a bloody fingerprint that was clearly found on the right side of Heather's bed. Police Tommy noted that if someone had intentionally left the stain, it would not have been so clear and precise. This fingerprint was also sent for analysis. In addition, Heather's cell phone was found in the apartment, but there was no password, so the contents could not be accessed. However, Kelsey returned the phone password to the police, and she informed Heather's mother about her death. Police Tommy hoped to gather more information about Heather from Kelsey, especially about Heather's personal life and her relationship with Chaz. Kelsey told the police that Heather's relationship with Chaz was very tense due to his lack of anger control, which often made him aggressive and unkind to Heather. Therefore, Heather chose to end the relationship. This prompted the police to start investigating Chaz. However, things took an unexpected turn when a young man named Michael tried to enter the crime scene, ignoring the warning tape. He had a key to Heather's apartment. According to Michael, the night before Heather died, she called him and invited him to dinner, and he agreed. After dinner, he went home, while Heather went to a local bar with friends. Heather then contacted Michael for help. She called me at 11:40 and said I needed to come to the bar because she really needed my help, Michael recalled. There were people hitting on her and she was upset. Okay, I'll be there, he replied. Michael explained that Heather was in trouble. A young man named Otavio had been bothering her and was aggressive. After the incident, he offered to drive Heather home. She ordered biscuit gravy, 2 eggs and sausage. Then I drove her home, he recalled. According to Michael, he last saw Heather at about 2:30 a.m. on August 7th. During questioning, he noted that Heather's front door should have been unlocked because he had her keys. She was wearing a dress that didn't have pockets for them, and he forgot to return them after unlocking the door. Michael appeared frustrated and seemingly honest, but the police still needed to get his fingerprints and DNA. The police contacted the bar to request surveillance footage, which confirmed Michael's statement during questioning. Further analysis showed that the fingerprints and DNA collected at the crime scene did not match Michael. After he was cleared as a suspect, the focus shifted to Otavio, the man who had been with Heather that night. With Kelsey's help in accessing Heather's cell phone, the police's interest in Otavio increased significantly. They found text messages from Heather to Otavio, inviting him to her apartment just hours before her death. The police asked Kelsey if she knew anything about Otavio. Kelsey didn't know much about him, but he seemed like a really nice guy with a good sense of humor. The police were puzzled as to why Heather would invite Otavio to her house after Michael had just saved her from him at the bar. The police then questioned Otavio, asking him what he had been doing yesterday afternoon. Otavio said that he had been spending time with Heather. They had some tequila and then went to the gym. The police then asked about Heather's late-night text messages. Otavio replied that she had sent him a text message around 2:30. When asked if he had seen the text message, he admitted that he had but said that he had been asleep at the time and had only seen it this morning. He reiterated that he had discovered it this morning because he had been asleep. The police pressed Otavio harder, using a rigorous interrogation technique that not all suspects could handle. Witnesses saw you enter the apartment. Phone records confirm you were there. You were with her yesterday. Otavio claims she texted him to come back and that he did not return afterwards. Otavio asks the police what happened to her, and is shocked to hear them say that she was raped and died at her home. In disbelief, he exclaims that it cannot be true. The police inform him that there is DNA all over her. Otavio is shocked by this revelation, seemingly unaware of what happened to Heather. After questioning, he readily agrees to a DNA test, believing that it will exonerate him. The results confirm his innocence as the DNA found at the crime scene does not match his, leading to his being eliminated as a suspect. With no leads, the police work almost around the clock, reviewing surveillance footage and scrutinizing every detail provided by witnesses. On the 9th day of the investigation, as Officer Tommy prepares to leave the office late at night, he receives an important call from the director of the forensics lab. Tommy finally gets the answer regarding the bloody fingerprints taken from Heather's bed. They belong to a young man named Brandon Bowling. The police then ask Brandon how he met Heather, and he says they met at the gym. Tommy starts the questioning gently, giving Brandon a chance to explain what happened that night. He asks if Brandon has ever been to her apartment, and Brandon confirms that he has. Brandon recalls that every time he has been there, she has left the door unlocked. Tommy then asks him if he has ever had sex with her. Brandon confirms that he has, and that they have had sex twice. Tommy continues to ask when was the last time he was at her apartment, and Brandon says that it was probably in July. Tommy continues to ask him why his fingerprints were on the bed, and Brandon insists that he did nothing to her. She had just been accepted to college and he was happy for her. He continues to deny any involvement in Heather's death. After questioning, the police asked Brandon to take a DNA test, arguing that if he was innocent, the test would prove it. Brandon agreed, presumably hoping to be released from police custody, but that did not happen. The police decided not to wait for the test results. They had found substantial grounds for the next step based on the fingerprint match. The police immediately filed a request with the court for permission to access Brandon's phone, which could help confirm his actions and monitor calls and texts on the night of the incident. After receiving court approval, the video from Brandon's phone was one of the most shocking discoveries, even for the most experienced police officers. In the video, Brandon recorded everything from intimate acts to beatings. Heather was still alive at the time of the recording. In February 2018, Brandon Bowling pleaded guilty to assaulting Heather Maples. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison without the possibility of parole. When the trial ended, Heather's mother, Jennifer, approached Bowling's mother in the hallway. Jennifer simply hugged the woman, saying that they had both lost children that day. Unfortunately, Brandon Bowling never explained his motives. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Alexandra Morgan. Alexandra Morgan, known as Alexandra to friends and family, is a single mother of 2 children, aged 4 and 11. They live in Willsley Pound, Cranbrook, Kent. Alexandra has lost contact with the children's father and has had to raise them on her own, which has not been easy. According to some sources, she works as a dog groomer. Alexandra is described as a dynamic and ambitious woman who is always looking after her children. She wants her children to have a better life and has worked hard to achieve it. On November 13, 2021, Alexandra met her parents and left her children in their care. She said she was going on a spa holiday with friends for 3 days. However, by November 17, Alexandra had not returned to pick up her children as scheduled. Her parents began to worry because they could not contact Alexandra by phone or text, which was very unusual. After several unsuccessful attempts to find their daughter, they decided to report Alexandra missing to the police. Kent police suspect that Alexandra Morgan's disappearance is related to a crime. They began their investigation by looking into the spa where Alexandra said she was going to go with friends. The police also wanted to identify these friends. Start an investigation. Police have obtained video footage from a gas station in Cranbrook where Alexandra was last seen. They are trying to locate her by looking for her white Mini Cooper. On the morning of November 14th, Alexandra went to the gas station to fill up, made a few purchases, and then left. The video shows nothing unusual. Rose Macaulay, the petrol station manager who has known Alexandra for 17 years, was there when Alexandra bought £10 worth of petrol, a cup of coffee and a snack on the morning she went missing. Rose said that no one knew what had happened to her or where she had gone. Rose continued that a friend and she had searched all over Hastings, but Alexandra was nowhere to be seen. She said that Alexandra wasn't shy, so she didn't think Alexandra was scared to go home. Rose just hoped nothing bad had happened and that Alexandra would get back safely. It was worrying, she added. When Alexandra arrived that Sunday morning, she was very well dressed, with more makeup than usual, her hair done and some eye-catching clothes. She arrived earlier than usual, looking happy and smiling. Alexandra's friends mentioned that in 2018, she shared on social media about being stalked by a stalker. In 2019, she posted a photo with the caption, "Hello Stalker," and included a message asking the stalker to stop following her page. A police spokesman said that it was unusual for Alexandra to have not contacted her family and that they were treating it as a possible murder. As the investigation continued, they were appealing for anyone who might have seen Alexandra or her white Mini Cooper with a black top to contact them. He added that even if people were not sure what they saw, they should report any suspicious information. Alexandra was described as a woman approximately 168 centimeters tall, of slim build, with shoulder-length brown hair. She was last seen wearing a knee-length green quilted jacket, a black top underneath, ripped blue jeans, knee-high black boots, and a silver necklace. Usually, when someone goes missing, they don't leave any traces behind to help the police investigate. Many missing cases remain unsolved. However, Alexandra Morgan's case is different. She left behind the last digital traces that helped the police find clues to her fate. Not only that, these traces also revealed some shocking secrets. Further investigation helped the police find out more information about Alexandra. She wanted to improve her finances, so she started working as a call girl and advertised her services online, without telling her family and friends. Women in this profession are among the most vulnerable. Everyone knows that they face risks, because it is impossible to know in advance whether the next customer is normal or dangerous. This job is unsafe. According to the investigation, Alexandra had an appointment with a regular customer before she went missing. The police have arrested this man. On November 25, 2021, they arrested a 40-year-old man, Mark Brown, from St. Leonard's-on-Sea on suspicion of murder. Mark Brown, a construction worker who is married with a son. His family were completely unaware of his secret life. Sussex police said that before Alexandra went missing, she had met Mark several times, and he had even bought her a Mini Cooper. Their first meeting took place on June 8, 2021, after Mark spotted her on an adult website. They met at her home in Sissinghurst, near Cranbrook, Kent. Things went well, and they continued to meet occasionally after that. The second meeting took place on June 21, nearly 2 weeks later. This time, Alexandra went to Little Bridge Farm near Hastings, Kent, a property Mark rented to meet women and for other purposes. They met 7 more times in August and September. Alexandra did not realize she was falling into a trap. On October 23, 2021, Mark sent her a text message asking if she would like to engage in a risk-free business transaction. He made an offer that involved £100,000 for 35 days at a hotel he would protect, a new ID, a straight car, and money for shopping. Mark asked her to do some simple tasks: go out for a smoke, pack the money, and buy a few things. After receiving this offer, Alexandra did some online research, which showed that she wanted to improve her children's lives. She learned about the minimum deposit for buying a house in 2021. Alexandra also intended to use the money to start a business. She searched for information such as profits from opening a sunbed shop in the UK and taxes to pay on £100,000. These actions showed Alexandra's character and desire to improve her life. Alexandra lied to her parents that she was going to the spa with friends, but in fact she was planning to meet Mark at the farm. On the morning of November 14th, she left home and was recorded on CCTV buying petrol in Cranbrook at 7:20 a.m. She arrived at Little Bridge Farm at around 8 a.m. 3 days later, on November 17th, Mark drove Alexandra's car to Holmhurst Lane, St. Leonard's, after replacing the real number plates with fake ones. The following day, November 18th, Alexandra's mother reported her daughter to the police because she had not picked her up and had stopped communicating. On November 23rd, police discovered CCTV footage of Alexandra's car following Mark's Jaguar to Little Bridge Farm. Kent police sealed off the entrance to the farm and interviewed Mark. He admitted meeting Alexandra but claimed she had left after 45 minutes. Mark agreed to allow police to take his fingerprints and DNA. 2 days later, on November 25th, police arrested Mark as the prime suspect in Alexandra Morgan's disappearance. Before we get into what happened to Alexandra, we need to go back to when she met Mark Brown. At that time, Mark had a wife named Leah Ware. She was 33, and she was a mother of 3 who does not have custody of her children. Leah first met Mark on March 25, 2018, through a prostitution website where she advertised her services. A few years later, this same website is where Mark met Alexandra Morgan. In late 2018, Mark and Leah began a relationship and moved into an apartment together. After 6 months, when their lease expired, Leah moved into a shipping container at Mark's Little Bridge Farm. Mark describes their relationship as a roller coaster of ups and downs. Leah has had a complicated life. She received weekly benefits, which were usually administered by Mark. She had a history of drug use and mental illness, but many said she was trying to improve herself in order to gain custody of her children. Mark and Leah were in a 3-year relationship before Leah mysteriously disappeared in May 2021. On the evening of May 5th and early morning of May 6th, Leah was with Jack Tyler, a friend and convicted drug dealer. They used drugs together and had an intimate relationship that night. This was the last time anyone saw Leah. The last call from her phone was made at 8:55 a.m. on May 7th. Police believe Leah died that day. On June 8, 2021, Mark met Alexandra for the first time at her home. The meeting went well and Alexandra found Mark to be a reasonable and generous man. However, she did not know that just a month earlier, Leah, who had been in a relationship with Mark, had disappeared without a trace. During the investigation, detectives discovered important text messages from Mark. He sent them to his ex-girlfriend from high school 5 days after meeting Alexandra Morgan. However, the content of the messages had nothing to do with Alexandra and were about Leah. The message reads, "I'll try to be careful. This happened recently. It's a nasty thing to get rid of. Just an old oil drum, 5 liters of diesel, and everything is gone. It burns so hot, it almost glows white. My actions are heartbreaking. It's ironic that a psychopath has a conscience. Investigators suspect Alexandra Morgan is dead and may not be Mark's only victim. Sussex police are appealing to the public for help in locating Leah or her body, as well as any information relating to her disappearance." After arresting Mark on November 25, 2021, police searched his farm and found a container that showed signs of having been recently burned. Inside the container, experts found bone and tooth remains. Tests confirmed that these were those of Alexandra Morgan. In a joint statement, Kent and Sussex police expressed their condolences to Alexandra and Leah's families. They confirmed that Alexandra's remains had been found, but Leah's remains have not yet been found. The investigation is ongoing and police are appealing for anyone with information. Police described Leah as a white woman, 168 centimeters tall, of slim build, with very long black hair and blue eyes. She had 3 tattoos, a dragon on her right leg, Chinese characters on her right hip, and a fairy sitting on a flower with the name Ryan on her right leg. The search of Mark's house lasted about a month and ended on January 7, 2022. During the investigation, police discovered the skeleton of a Pomeranian dog at the bottom of the pond, with a heavy object tied to its neck. Investigators believe this was Leah's dog, which Mark threw into the pond after killing Leah. On February 1, 2022, police charged Mark with the murder of Leah Ware, although they did not find her remains. Mark had previously been charged with the murder of Alexandra Morgan. Mark initially denied all charges. However, when police presented evidence of him burning Alexandra Morgan's body, Mark admitted to Alexandra's death, but maintained that it was an accident. Mark Brown's trial began on October 17, 2022. During the trial, new information about the 2 cases was revealed. The jury heard that after Leah Ware went missing on May 7, 2021, Mark regularly used her new bank card to withdraw money from her account each week. The bank card was sent to the address of his sister Cheryl. In July 2021, the jury was informed that Mark had twice withdrawn £200 from Leah Ware's account shortly after transferring £200 into his own. When asked why, Mark explained that he could have used her £200 and then paid it back, as at that point, someone owed him £430, so he could have paid it back. Prosecuting attorney Duncan Atkinson asked if it was a coincidence that Leah had died after getting a new bank card. A surprised Mark replied that he didn't understand what Duncan meant and that, as far as he knew, Leah was still alive. Duncan continued by asking if Mark was trying to take Ms. Leah's money and pointed out that Leah was in a place where money didn't mean anything. Mark was confused and said he didn't understand what Duncan was talking about at all, adding that it sounded like they were talking about 2 different people. During the trial for Alexandra Morgan's death, Mark maintained that it was an accident. He explained that Alexandra slipped and fell on a piece of equipment in the workshop he rented at Little Bridge Farm, causing her to hit her head. When he rushed to her, he found Alexandra bleeding profusely. He grabbed a towel to try to stop the bleeding. But when he lifted her head to put the towel under, more blood came out. Prosecuting attorney Duncan Atkinson objected to the defendant's testimony, stating that when the defendant first saw the victim lying on her back on the ground, there was a lot of blood around her head. This clearly showed that she was seriously injured and needed immediate help, especially medical attention. This was obvious before the defendant did anything else. Mark replied that he was panicking and his first reaction was to grab a towel to stop the bleeding. After performing CPR and checking for breathing by holding a mirror to Alexandra Morgan's mouth and nose, Mark confirmed that she was dead. Over the next 5 minutes, he did 3 things. He used his sweater to block the blood, he went outside to vomit, and he retrieved his phone to call 911. He explained that he then decided to cover up the whole thing by wrapping Alexandra in a sleeping bag and wrapping a towel around her head to stop the bleeding. He questioned how he could prove it was an accident and admitted that the decision to cover it up was stupid and the worst mistake of his life. Mark then decided to dispose of Alexandra's body using an incinerator he had built from an old oil drum earlier that year and which he had often used to burn rubbish. "I had heard stories about burning dead bodies," he said, "and I didn't want anyone to stumble upon a body lying around." Mark therefore maintained that he had nothing to do with Leah Ware's disappearance and believed she was still alive, while Alexandra's death was assumed an accident. At the trial, the court heard testimony from Mark's boss, Alan, who said that Mark had warned him that the police might come to arrest him. This conversation took place on November 24th. When Alan asked why the police might arrest him, Mark replied, "For double murder." This answer was significant because Mark implicitly admitted that Leah Ware was dead and that Alexandra Morgan's death was not an accident. Mark denied those words, claiming he only mentioned a 25-year sentence for one murder, not a double murder. Prosecutor Duncan asked about the murder, and Mark admitted his feelings about Alexandra's case made him act as he did, despite his inability to prove his innocence. The jury also heard that Mark had deliberately smeared Alexandra and Leah reputations, as the prosecutor put it, to create a false image of the women. What people should remember about Leah and Alexandra is that they were always smiling and happy in life. They both deserve to be remembered by their loved ones for the wonderful qualities they were. On December 1st, 2022, a jury of 12 found Mark, 41, guilty on all counts. Judge Nicholas Hilliard said, "This is an extremely serious case and the impact on the victim's family is immeasurable." He announced that Mark would be sentenced to life in prison and that he would have to decide what minimum time Mark should serve, or even whether to grant clemency. The judge stressed that if Mark revealed what he had done to Leah Ware's body, he would take that information into account when sentencing. However, Mark did not take this opportunity. Before the judge delivered his verdict, the court heard from Leah Ware's mother, Rebecca Martin, about the impact the case had had on the family. "Mark continues to cause our family pain by not revealing what happened. Leah lost her life because Mark Brown wanted to satisfy his dark desires," she said. "He controlled and manipulated every aspect of her life. When she was no longer of any value, he abandoned her like a lifeless object." The court also heard from Alexandra Morgan's parents, who said Alexandra was intelligent, energetic, and determined to succeed. Despite the challenges she faced, she overcame them and held out hope for her future and the child she loved dearly. On January 13, 2023, the court sentenced Mark Brown to 2 life terms. He will be eligible for parole after 49 years. Judge Hilliard imposed the sentence in absentia because Mark refused to appear. He said, "No sentence can ever measure the number of lives lost. Nothing can undo the defendant's actions, it cannot. His conscience is not troubled by what he has done." Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Tara Lynn Grant. Tara Lynn Grant was born on June 22, 1972 in Michigan. She grew up on a farm with her parents and older sister. During her childhood, Tara enjoyed doing outdoor activities such as horseback riding and helping her family take care of farm animals. She was also very active in school sports, cheerleading, playing basketball and playing music in the school band. After completing high school, Tara decided to attend the University of Michigan. It was here that she met her boyfriend Steven and married him after graduating. Tara, after graduating, got a good job at a large international company. Meanwhile, Steven had been involved in politics as an assistant to a state senator. However, when the senator retired, Steven lost his job. Therefore, he decided to work at his father's small tool shop. After 4 years of marriage, Tara and Steven had a daughter, followed by a son a few years later. When their second child was born, they bought a new home in Monmouth County, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Tara was successful in her career, but due to the nature of her work, she often traveled to different states and countries, leaving her with only weekends to spend with her family. As a result, Steven had to take on most of the responsibility for the children. His father's store job and the children's care were difficult for him. So they decided to hire a full-time nanny to help ease the burden. After a short time, they found the right person. They hired a young German woman who quickly bonded with their children and took on most of the childcare. Because of her work, Tara only came home on weekends, which led to more frequent arguments between them. Tara expected that after her next promotion, she would be able to adjust her schedule to spend more time at home with her family, but when she was promoted, she traveled for work almost every day. This continued until February 14, 2007, when something unexpected happened. On Valentine's Day, Steven reported to the police that Tara had been out of contact for 5 days. This was unusual because Tara was in constant contact with her family, especially when children were involved. Steven recounted the incident as follows. On the evening of February 9th, Tara returned home from a business trip and said she had to leave earlier than expected, staying home for only 1 day. This led to an argument, and Tara began packing her things. As she left the house, she told the driver of a dark-colored car, "I'll be waiting down the street." From then on, Tara was out of contact and did not return any calls. The police wondered why Steven waited 5 days to report the incident. Steven explained that he was not worried at first because he thought Tara had just left for work early as planned and had not contacted her because they had just had an argument. However, he became concerned when Tara did not contact her family for an extended period of time. Normally, when she was on a business trip, she would call her 2 young children, but this time she did not contact them. Furthermore, Tara's boss called Steven on Monday to say that she had not shown up for a meeting. This made him even more worried, and he was sure that Tara was missing. Steven called Tara's parents and told them about her lack of contact with home. However, the parents thought that Tara just needed time off after an argument with Steven. Previously, Tara had told her parents that her relationship with Steven was having difficulties due to work, and they argued frequently. Therefore, her relatives thought that Tara just wanted to temporarily leave and would return home when she had stabilized. As time passed and Tara still did not appear, and she did not answer any calls, Steven began to worry about her safety. He decided to contact the police for help. During the interrogation, the police noticed some suspicious scratches on Steven. They asked if the scratches were related to the argument with Tara. But Steven denied it. He explained that he often got injured while working at his father's store. After the interview, the police said they needed to search Steven's home, and he agreed. When they arrived, the police discovered that all of Tara's belongings were missing from the home, including her papers and wallet, along with her suitcase. Steven also gave them access to Tara's personal computer. The police checked it and found that there had been no bank transactions in the days after she disappeared. The police were surprised because Tara would have needed to pay for expenses if she had gone somewhere, such as buying a plane ticket or booking a hotel room. During the search of the home, the police found no signs of Tara's whereabouts after she disappeared. There was no evidence or clues. Therefore, the police decided to focus on determining what she had been doing and where she had been on February 9th. The area they live in is considered one of the safest in the country, and the local police department has little experience investigating similar disappearances. The police ask Stephen to take a lie detector test, but he refuses. Stephen insists that he would never harm his wife and becomes very emotional. The police then leave his home and consider their next steps. However, the next morning, Stephen contacts the police again and says he is willing to cooperate. However, a short time later, Stephen's lawyer contacts the police and says he has advised his agent not to cooperate with the police. Other than following the usual practice in such cases, they are unable to find any other leads. During the investigation, Tara's family, friends, and colleagues said they had not heard from her since February 9th and did not know where she might be. Additionally, her bank account had not recorded any significant transactions, although she needed to make some basic purchases. Police began to question Stephen and discovered that his driver's license had been revoked. However, Stephen continued to drive despite the ban. Police used this to arrest Stephen for driving without a license. After his arrest, Stephen claimed that the police were considering him a prime suspect in his wife's disappearance and refused to answer any questions. With the assistance of his lawyer, Stephen was released on bail and returned home. Police continued to investigate and requested Tara's cell phone records to gather more evidence. On the day Tara went missing, she made one last call. It was from the airport, in which she told Stephen that she would be home soon. Stephen then called her repeatedly, but all the calls went to voicemail. The police listened to these recordings and found that Stephen asked Tara to answer or call back. He claimed that Tara did not care about the children and asked her to come home for the children. However, Tara's cell phone was turned off and was last connected to a cell tower near her home on the evening of her disappearance. It is worth noting that the police did not find any incoming calls to Tara at that time, although Stephen said that someone had called her before she left the house and said that the person would be waiting for her on the street. Stephen was really worried about his wife and at the same time angry at Tara's actions of abandoning their children. Although the police were investigating him, they could not find any new traces. Stephen still refused to cooperate with the police, accusing them of wasting time suspecting him instead of looking for Tara. During this time, Stephen actively appeared in the media. Tara's mysterious disappearance attracted a lot of attention from many people, and in front of the camera, Stephen begged her to return home safely. When the company that Stephen and Tara hired the nanny learned about the case, they decided to send the nanny back to Germany. Before leaving, the nanny reported to the police about her working hours at their house. The nanny said that on the evening Tara came home, she went to a bar with her friends. When the nanny returned home, she met Stephen, who seemed sad and said that Tara had just left home. Although Stephen refused to cooperate with the police, he hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent, to investigate the case. However, this investigator also failed to find Tara. The police decided to change their approach and contacted the nanny agency that employed Tara and Stephen. They discovered an important piece of information. Before hiring the German nanny, they had a total of 6 other nannies, but none of them had worked there long term. Police interviewed the nannies, most of whom said Stephen behaved strangely and unnervingly. They said he would rummage through their belongings, ask personal questions, and verbally abuse them. The police began investigating why the last nanny from Germany had a completely different description of her time with the family. They had only heard good things about Stephen. To clarify the matter, the police monitored the nanny's emails and phone calls. This led to an unexpected piece of information. The police discovered text messages between her and Stephen, which showed that they had been in a relationship. It was learned that the 19-year-old had been having an affair with him during Tara's business trips and that the relationship continued until she quit her job and had to leave the country. Although this was an important clue, the police could not yet conclude that Stephen was involved in Tara's disappearance. Therefore, they continued to look for other evidence. During the investigation, the police talked to Tara's relatives and friends and found that most of them did not like Stephen because of his strange behavior. They believed that Stephen wanted to control Tara's every move and often caused conflicts with her family. The police also found another important piece of information. Stephen's ex-girlfriend, whom he had dated before meeting Tara, contacted the police and revealed something surprising. According to her, Stephen contacted her again a few months ago, and their conversations gradually became intimate. Eventually, Stephen expressed his desire to start a romantic relationship with her, even though they were both married to other people. Stephen also complained about Tara and her frequent absences. He suspected that she was cheating on him with her boss. To verify this, he installed tracking software on her computer, allowing him to read her messages, but he found no evidence of Tara's infidelity. This information made the police even more suspicious of her husband's involvement in Tara's disappearance. However, the police still needed more evidence. Since it had been several weeks since Tara went missing, they began to consider the possibility that she was no longer alive and began an extensive search for her body. Police, along with volunteers, began searching the area around Tara's house and a large park nearby for several miles. However, the search lasted for several days and still yielded no results. But everything changed on February 28th. A woman walking in the park discovered something strange under a tree along the path. A plastic bag was covered with branches and snow, but it was clear that there was still something inside. Therefore, she decided to examine the bag closely. When she looked into the bag, she discovered rubber gloves and metal fragments along with a dark red substance at the bottom of the bag. She called the police to report the incident, and she decided to keep the bag and turn it in to the police. Police suspected the dark red substance could be blood, so they sent the bag to a lab for testing. However, due to the large workload, experts said the DNA analysis could take up to 2 months. In the meantime, experts have tested the bag and confirmed that the dark red substance is indeed human blood. The police focused all their efforts on the area where the bag was found, mobilizing all resources to investigate. Meanwhile, Stephen did not participate in the search. Instead, Stephen spent his time giving an interview to a news channel, giving many suspicious answers. Stephen repeatedly criticized Tara for being away from home so often. He called her a bad mother and claimed that he shouldered most of the responsibility for taking care of the children. When the reporter asked about their financial situation and whether he was living off Tara's money, Stephen became angry. He insisted that he did not need a single penny from Tara. During the interview, Stephen accused Tara of having an affair but did not provide any evidence. He repeatedly criticized Tara. The police obtained a search warrant for Tara and Stephen's home. The police arrived at Stephen's home. At the same time, Stephen returned from an interview with a reporter. The police informed him of the search warrant for his home. Stephen opened the door for them and then called his lawyer. The lawyer asked the police if Stephen was under arrest. The police replied that he was not. Stephen then said that he was going to walk his dog and left. During that time, the police searched each room in the house. They eventually arrived at the garage and found a large green bin containing several plastic bags. When they opened one of the plastic bags, they found an unknown substance and women's clothing. When the police opened the other bag, they discovered that it contained human remains. After examining a total of 5 bags in the bin, the police quickly confirmed that they contained the remains of a woman. Police believed they had found Tara's body and suspected Stephen of being her killer. However, Stephen did not appear, so the police immediately launched a search for him to prevent him from fleeing or causing harm to others. Meanwhile, the police requested reinforcements to search the park for Tara's remains as more remains were still missing from the garage. Over 100 police officers from neighboring counties were called in to assist in the search, and their efforts soon paid off. A few hundred meters from where the bag was found, the police found another body part. Then they found the head. Due to the cold weather, the rest of the body was quite well preserved, helping the police confirm that it was Tara. The police continued to search and found some more body parts. However, in the evening, the search had to be stopped until the next morning. During this time, the police also tried to locate Stephen but were unsuccessful. They contacted his friends, and one of them revealed that Stephen had called him, informing him that the police were searching at Stephen's house and asking to pick him up on the way. Stephen's friend came to pick him up and took him home. On the way, he noticed that Stephen's behavior was very strange. He seemed scared, his hands were shaking, and he seemed very depressed. When Stephen arrived at his friend's house, Stephen said he wanted to see his children and borrowed a car from his friend. However, Stephen's children were at his sister's house in another state at the time. The friend agreed to lend him the pickup truck, and Stephen left. In order to track Stephen, the police requested his phone and credit card information. This helped them quickly determine Stephen's travel route. By monitoring his withdrawals and calls to his sister, the police realized that Stephen was on his way to see his children. Realizing this, the police immediately set out to track him. An unexpected event occurred. The police received a call from a German woman with whom Stephen had a relationship. The woman said that Stephen had just contacted her and confessed to killing his wife, Tara. According to him, they had argued that night and he became violent after Tara slapped him. In a fit of rage, Stephen pushed Tara and she fell to the floor, resulting in her death from head injuries. After this confession, the police no longer had any doubts about Stephen's guilt. However, they still needed to catch him. For hours, they searched the area along the highway leading to the neighboring state. They eventually found Stephen's car near the entrance to the national park, but he himself was nowhere to be found. The police searched the area and after several hours of searching, they found Stephen using a thermal imaging camera. He was lying under a tree, wearing light clothing and in a dangerous state of hypothermia. The officers noticed that he was suffering from an unusual condition, often talking to trees and mumbling incomprehensible sentences. Fearing that he was in danger, the officers quickly airlifted him to the hospital. At that time, his body temperature was only 88 degrees Fahrenheit, but doctors were able to save him. However, he needed time to fully recover. While Stephen was in the hospital, he was charged with murder and the case was transferred to court. Interestingly, on the same day, Stephen's attorney refused to defend him. When asked why, Stephen's attorney gave a vague answer. A new attorney was then appointed for Stephen. Meanwhile, forensic pathologists began investigating Tara's remains. One of the most experienced pathologists in the country, who had worked on such high-profile cases as the JFK case and the JonBenet Ramsey case, was appointed as the chief medical examiner. After examining Tara's remains, the chief medical examiner concluded that Stephen's story did not match the facts. According to Stephen, Tara died of head trauma, but the investigation actually showed that Tara's cause of death was strangulation. When Stephen recovered, the police came to the hospital to see him and he told them what happened that night. The incident started when Tara returned and said she had to leave a day early. This led to a heated argument between the two. In a fit of rage, Stephen attacked Tara. She tried to leave, but he held her back. Tara defended herself by punching Stephen in the face, which angered him and he attacked her. The incident escalated when Stephen yelled at and strangled Tara. He then dragged her body down the second floor to the garage and put her in the trunk of his car. Meanwhile, the nanny returned home. To cover up his crime, Stephen told her that Tara had left him. The next day, he took the body to his father's workshop while making sure no one else was there. To cover his tracks, Stephen destroyed all of Tara's documents and personal belongings, then used a saw to cut her body into pieces. A few hours later, he packed the remains into plastic bags, placed them in a container, and returned home, leaving the body in his car for several days. He pondered how to dispose of the remains while creating an alibi for himself. He repeatedly called Tara and left messages on her voicemail, begging her to come home. Stephen took his son's sled and went to the park. There, he placed the container containing Tara's remains on the sled and began pulling it up a hill to avoid the crowded area. However, the rope he was pulling the sled with was not secure, and it slipped out of his hands. The sled began to roll down, the container tipped over, and the bags containing the remains spilled out. After picking up the bags, Stephen put the container back on the sled, and after a while, he found a remote place to bury the bags under the snow. He then left the park. A few days after he left, the police began looking for Tara, and the detectives announced that they would begin a search in the area of the park where Stephen had buried the bags. Stephen became panicked, remembering that the largest bag had been poorly hidden and could soon be discovered. To avoid this, he decided to move the bags to a safer place. Stephen went to the park, picked up a few bags, shouldered them, and carried them to his father's workshop, placing them on the roof. The next day, before going to the interview, he took the box from home, went to the workshop to carry the bags back to his garage. However, the next day, the police obtained a search warrant for the house. There, they found the bags in the box. When the situation became clear, Stephen confessed that he had not originally planned to surrender. During his conversation with the police, Stephen showed no remorse for his crimes. Instead, he often smiled and joked even as he described the process of hiding and disposing of the body. While Stephen awaited trial in prison, his children continued to live with his sister. This did not please Tara's family. Despite this, Stephen's sister continued to keep in touch with him, even feeling sorry for him and responding to jokes about Tara's murder. Tara's family eventually won custody of the children, but Stephen's family was still allowed to see them. In November 2007, Stephen's trial began. However, he did not deny his guilt. His new attorney then tried to get Stephen to get a reduced sentence. The attorney explained that Stephen and Tara's troubled marriage and Tara's frequent absences were the main reasons for Stephen's crime. During the trial, Stephen had lied about Tara's plans to come home a day earlier. Tara's sister, who had spoken to her before the murder, also confirmed this information. During that conversation, Tara told her sister that she would be home soon after that, as she did every week. There was no evidence that Tara had lied to her husband. Tara's boss said that Tara's relationship with the man was purely business, which was confirmed by their emails and text messages. The prosecution failed to prove that Stephen had planned the murder in advance. He had clearly committed the crime in a fit of rage, which could have resulted in a second-degree murder charge instead of a first-degree one. On December 21, 2007, the jury unanimously found Stephen guilty and he was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years in prison. Stephen's attorney attempted to appeal the verdict, but to no avail. He has since served time behind bars. But his story didn't end there. Tara's murder captured the attention of millions across the country, and Stephen clearly enjoyed it. While in prison, he began writing a book and begged to have it published with the help of his sister. They even discussed the possibility of turning it into a movie, and Stephen considered which famous actor could play him. In 2008, something else came to light. Stephen's children told their aunt that they had actually seen their father kill their mother that evening. They came out of the room after hearing screams and witnessed the whole thing. When this information appeared in the media, Stephen's relatives accused the children of lying and continued to protect him. That same year, it was revealed that Stephen's father, unlike other relatives, did not support him, could not live with what his son had done, and Stephen's father's body was found in his home. To this day, Stephen remains behind bars and will only be eligible for parole in 2058. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kira Steger. Kira Steger was born on November 19, 1982, in Des Plaines, Illinois. She was the daughter of Marcy and Jay Kira, who described her as a bubbly, dedicated, and sweet person. Kira worked at the Mall of America, where she held positions at 2 stores, Wet Seal and, most recently, Delia's. Her co-workers were not only her best friends but also her family. She had a unique ability to see strengths in others that they had not yet seen. Kira had planned a bright and peaceful future. Unfortunately, her dreams came to an abrupt end when Kira mysteriously disappeared. On Thursday, February 21, 2013, Kira had a shift. Her co-workers said she was feeling well and had plans to go out to dinner at a fancy restaurant with her husband, Jeffrey Trevino, after work. Kira and Jeffrey met 3 years ago and quickly fell in love. Kira and Jeffrey began a romantic relationship and eventually married, forming a happy and stable couple. Although they sometimes disagreed, they resolved everything in private, without letting anyone know about these disagreements. 2 days later, on Saturday, February 23, when Kira failed to show up for work, her co-workers became concerned because this was unlike her. Kira was always punctual, strict with herself and others, never late, and always kept to a schedule. When Kira could not be reached, her co-workers called Jeffrey, but he did not know where his wife was. Jeffrey said that Kira had left home the morning before and had not returned. He was not too worried because Kira had a habit of occasionally being absent for a day or two, often staying overnight at friends' or relatives' houses without notice. However, the bad weather with heavy snow that day may have worried him. Jeffrey thought that something might have happened to her on the road. Perhaps her car broke down and her cell phone ran out of battery. That same day, not receiving any news from his wife, Jeffrey reported her missing and contacted Kira's family. Her family was shocked by the mysterious disappearance of their loved one, and this was a huge shock for them. After receiving the report of Kira Steger's disappearance, detectives immediately began investigating. Investigators began by questioning Jeffrey and searching the nearby area. Detectives went to Jeffrey's home to talk to him. Jeffrey said that on Thursday, he and Kira wanted to spend time together. They had dinner, talked, went bowling, and then left the mall. According to Jeffrey, they both went home soon after because Kira planned to watch a movie. Jeffrey also told the detectives that his wife had left the house the following morning, Friday, around 8:30. A meeting had been scheduled at work that she had to attend. Kira was acting normally, and Jeffrey did not notice anything unusual. Jeffrey did not find anything unusual about Kira's occasional disappearances, although he did not know where she went or who she was spending time with. Jeffrey said that they had been having relationship problems for the past few months. However, he did not find it serious or alarming, but rather viewed it as the usual small arguments that occur in every family. The detective asked Jeffrey about who Kira might be seeing and whether she was in any other relationship. Jeffrey dismissed this idea, as he had asked Kira directly and she had denied it. According to Jeffrey, he truly loved Kira and trusted her. Investigators turned over all the information they had gathered about Kira and her car to the patrol team. Detectives also went directly to the Mall of America to verify Jeffrey's statements and look for clues. The Mall of America, located in Bloomington, is one of the largest malls in the world, with 520 stores, an amusement park, an aquarium, a movie theater, a golf course, and many other amenities. The mall has numerous security cameras, so detectives reviewed the footage of Kira leaving the company on February 21. The video did not show anything unusual. Jeffrey's initial statement was very credible. He met Kira after work. They stayed in the mall for a while, then went down to the parking lot and left. There was no argument, and the evening went smoothly. Waiting without knowing what had happened was difficult, and each passing day made Kira's family more and more worried about her safety. With no word from her, Kira's family traveled to Bloomington to help with the investigation. They printed flyers with Kira's picture on them, posted them on utility poles, and handed them out to passers-by. Their goal was to attract as much attention as possible to find Kira. They knew they couldn't just stand by and had to take action to find their loved one. While Kira's family was handing out flyers, the investigators continued their investigation. While interviewing neighbors, the police discovered a surveillance camera on a neighbor's home. The camera was pointed at Kira and Jeffrey's home. The investigators asked the homeowner to copy the footage from the camera because they hoped to find clues in it. Meanwhile, records from a cell phone company provided them with a new lead. According to phone records, Kira was in a relationship with someone other than Jeffrey. That person was Ryan Wendt, the manager of the chain of stores where she worked. They had a deep relationship and corresponded frequently. Police determined that Ryan had left the state and that when the search for Kira began, Ryan was driving to Colorado. This man was closely related to the investigation because, in addition to his relationship with Kira, he was out of state at the time of her disappearance. It could be a coincidence, or there could be something else going on behind his departure. Investigators needed answers. After several attempts, detectives were able to contact Ryan. He said the last time he had contact with Kira was when he was driving through South Dakota and texting her. These messages were sent shortly before Kira went missing. After reviewing the timestamps, detectives determined that Kira had contacted her new lover while she was having dinner with her husband. The messages showed that Kira had become increasingly distant from Jeffrey. Investigators ran a cell tower location check on Ryan's phone and checked his credit card statements. The results showed that he was indeed out of state that night and had no connection to Kira's disappearance. As a result, Ryan was released and cleared as a suspect. The timestamps on the messages showed that Kira was still texting Ryan even after she returned home to her husband. However, after 11:44 p.m., their conversation stopped, and Kira's phone was no longer active. Meanwhile, another investigation team was preparing to review video from a surveillance camera installed at Kira's neighbor's home. The camera captured most of the street scene from left to right. However, it rotated so quickly that it was difficult to observe. If the camera saw something suspicious, it immediately moved in another direction. Jeffrey and Kira's house was only visible for a few seconds when the camera panned to the right. Jeffrey said that after dinner and bowling, he and Kira went home, watched a movie, and went to bed. However, when investigators reviewed the footage, they discovered that just after 2 a.m., Kira's car backed into the driveway. Because the footage was poor and the camera kept moving, it was difficult to determine exactly what was happening at that time. The car then left the house. Jeffrey explained that Kira had asked him to fill up her car with gas for work the next day, so he went to the gas station. Surprisingly, this story was true. He was seen at the gas station around 3:30 a.m. However, detectives discovered that after leaving the gas station, he headed toward the highway instead of home. It is unclear where Jeffrey went next. The neighbor's camera did not record him returning, but this may have been a coincidence since the camera was always moving. Therefore, in theory, Jeffrey could have gotten home later since the camera was capturing a different angle. When investigators reviewed the video, they saw Kira's Chevrolet leave at 9:21 a.m. Unfortunately, they couldn't determine who was driving. A missing person report was filed on Saturday, February 23rd, and on Monday, February 25th, police received a call about a suspicious car parked near the shopping center where Kira worked. There are 2 multi-story parking lots there. A security guard found the car parked for several days and asked for it to be towed. When the driver inspected the car before towing it, He noticed suspicious red stains on the trunk lid and immediately called the police. That car turned out to be Kira's white car. Although there wasn't much blood, just a few small stains, it was still very concerning. In the car, they found Kira's wallet and a divorce form downloaded from the internet. Additionally, a dark object in the snow behind the car caught the attention of the investigators. As they approached, they found a rolled-up trunk mat with dark stains. DNA testing confirmed that it was Kira Steger's blood. The investigators were devastated to realize that Kira was most likely dead. This heartbreaking news was a huge shock to her family and friends. Their last hope of seeing Kira again was dashed, leaving them with questions. How did she die? Was she in pain? Who could hate her enough to take her life? The fact that Kira's body had not been found added to the confusion, as the endless grief seemed unlikely to be alleviated. The detectives made it a top priority to find out who had left the car in the parking lot. The car left the house at 9:21 a.m., and about 20 minutes later, it was caught on a mall camera. There were no cameras in the parking lot where the car was found, but another camera recorded the road leading to the lot, which was located near where Kira's car was parked. After reviewing the camera footage, detectives found that a hooded man appeared a few minutes after Kira's white Chevrolet pulled into the lot. It was cold enough that it was not unusual for him to be wearing a hoodie, but detectives wanted to learn more about where he went. The hooded man was seen walking across the street and approaching a taxi stand. He briefly chatted with a driver, then got into a cab and drove away. Police were able to determine the company that owned the taxis in the mall parking lot. Based on the time he spent talking to the drivers, police were able to determine the license plate numbers. All of the taxis had GPS tracking devices, which showed that the man ended up about a block away from Kira and Jeffrey's house and left after paying in cash. As the taxi left the neighborhood, it was caught on camera, the same camera that had filmed part of Kira and Jeffrey's house. 2 minutes later, a man in a hoodie entered the frame. The low resolution of the video made it difficult to identify his face, but the white logo on his shirt was clearly visible. As investigators continued to examine the video, they saw the man enter Kira and Jeffrey's house. Kira was missing, leading to suspicions that the hooded man might be Jeffrey. After obtaining a search warrant, the police went to the house. At first, the house looked normal and unremarkable. However, upon closer inspection, forensic experts discovered dark red stains in Kira and Jeffrey's bedroom. There were several on the wall near the bed and about 100 on the mattress. It was clear that the bedroom had been rearranged and cleaned recently. When the forensic team sprayed luminol, the carpeting glowed. There were bloodstains throughout the house that were not visible to the naked eye. The bloodstains originated in the bedroom and extended to other areas of the house. Forensic testing confirmed that the blood belonged to Kira, leading investigators to believe that she was no longer alive. In addition to searching the house, police also searched Jeffrey's car. There were no bloodstains or signs of a struggle. However, they found one interesting detail: a gas station receipt in Jeffrey's car, dated 1 hour and 40 minutes before Kira's car was abandoned in the mall parking lot. According to the receipt, the transaction was made using Jeffrey's card. Detectives went to the gas station to review the security cameras. The camera recorded Jeffrey filling up with gas, then going inside to withdraw money from an ATM. The video clearly showed Jeffrey's face and a logo on his jacket that looked similar to the logo on the man in the earlier footage. With video evidence and all the evidence in the house, Jeffrey Trevino, 39, was arrested. He was taken to the police station for questioning and is now the prime suspect. Immediately after being released from the interrogation room, Jeffrey contacted a lawyer and was advised to exercise his right to remain silent. The police had enough evidence to charge him, but the most compelling evidence was Kira's body. no one suspected Kira was dead at the time. Police, Kira's family, and volunteers searched for her for months. In late March, as the snow melted, a volunteer found a strange bag on the edge of Keller Lake a few miles from Jeffrey's house and called the police. The bag contained a bloody pillow, a shirt, and a bra. The forensic team linked these items to Kira because her DNA was found on them. The lake remained frozen, hampering the search. However, when divers surveyed the water, they found no remains. The area around the lake was searched several times with 4 cadaver dogs, trained to find dead bodies, but to no avail. 2.5 months after Kira's disappearance, on May 8, 2013, the St. Paul Police Department received a disturbing call. The caller reported that he had seen what appeared to be a body in the Mississippi River. Police discovered and recovered a body. The body was naked. Dental records identified it as Kira Steger. She had suffered severe trauma to the forehead and a broken left index finger. Because the body was so badly decomposed, the medical examiner was unable to determine the exact cause of death. Using new evidence, investigators attempted to reconstruct a timeline of the events leading up to Kira's death and the events that followed. They believed that when Kira and Jeffrey returned home, Jeffrey found her texting with someone else. When Kira refused to show her husband the messages, he snatched the phone from her and broke her fingers. After reading the romantic messages, Jeffrey became even angrier, and in a fit of rage, he killed Kira and tried to cover up the crime. He drove Kira's car to the house, put the body in the trunk, then went to the gas station before taking the body to the riverbank and dumping it. He then returned home, discarding the bag containing Kira's pillow and clothes along the way. The next morning, he went to the gas station to withdraw cash from an ATM, knowing that after leaving Kira's car in the shopping center car park, he would need cash to pay for a taxi. After leaving Kira's car, Jeffrey went home and spent the day cleaning. He tried to make it look like Kira had driven away that morning and that nothing had happened. However, this plan was foiled by surveillance cameras. In October 2013, a jury convicted Jeffrey Trevino, 39. They accepted that his actions were not intentional and that they were the result of a heated after discovering that his wife was having an affair. Before the judge handed down his sentence, Kira's family spoke out. "This monster was a calculating criminal," said Carrie Ann Steger, Kira's sister. "He deserves no mercy." Kira's mother, Marcy, said Jeffrey showed no sympathy for her daughter. "He dumped my daughter like a piece of trash into the most polluted water in the country," she said. But her father, Jay, said, "No punishment can ever make up for the pain Jeffrey has caused our family. No amount of time for Jeffrey is enough, never enough," he said. In November 2013, Jeffrey Trevino was sentenced to 27.5 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2031. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Amanda Plass. Amanda Plass was born on December 11, 1990. She grew up in Choppy, Massachusetts, with her sister Emily and brother Nicholas. Amanda's mother, Michelle Mayes, described her daughter as a hippie and often joked that she was born in the wrong era. In 2011, Amanda worked as a waitress at a Friendly's in Choppy and was dating a 27-year-old carpenter named Seth Green. On August 26, 2011, Seth called 911 to report that he had found Amanda unconscious in the kitchen of her third-floor apartment. During the call, Seth tearfully told the operator that when he arrived, Amanda was lying on the floor, unresponsive, with multiple stab wounds to her body. He did not know how to help and requested the police and an ambulance. When paramedics arrived, they confirmed that Amanda had died from multiple stab wounds, including to her chest, throat, and abdomen. Police cordoned off the home where the crime took place. When they arrived, they found Seth on the porch, crying and unable to calm down. Detectives carefully searched Amanda's apartment. Whoever the perpetrator was, they had escaped but left behind some evidence. The first thing that caught the detectives' attention was the large amount of blood in the kitchen, indicating that the attack had been carried out with a knife. Police also found Nike shoe prints on the floor and handprints on the broken glass window. The motive for this brutal murder remains a mystery. Based on the condition and number of Amanda's injuries, detectives suspect that she may have known her attacker and that the motive was a personal vendetta. Therefore, the first suspect was Amanda's boyfriend, Seth Green. Police took Seth Green in for questioning. It was no surprise that he was the first suspect, given his close relationship with the victim, his blood-stained clothing, and his role in calling 911. The fact that he and Amanda had been dating for less than 2 weeks before her death, and that her family barely knew him, raised suspicions. Seth was 7 years older than Amanda and likely had different views on some issues. But did that lead to an argument that resulted in the brutal crime? This led investigators to suspect that Seth could be the killer, even though he claimed Amanda was dead before he arrived at her apartment. They determined that about 2 hours had passed between Amanda's death and Seth calling 911. That was enough time to cover up evidence and remove the weapon. So the first question detectives had to answer was whether Seth Green had anything to do with Amanda's death. When Seth showed up at the police station, he looked like he had just been through something terrible. He was mourning the death of his girlfriend. Investigators wanted to know if his feelings were genuine or if he was just trying to deflect suspicion from himself. During questioning, Seth said he had been working all day. He had planned to take Amanda to the restaurant where she worked, but couldn't because of his busy schedule. Seth said he didn't know Amanda well because they weren't in a long-term relationship, but he loved her and had no reason to hurt her. Seth worked as a carpenter at a construction site. Investigators began asking him about his tools, implying that he may have used one of them to commit the crime. Seth often used a tool belt at work, which contained a variety of carpentry tools, including a knife. However, he claimed that he always put the tool belt back after work, and that day was no exception. Seth finished the job, changed his clothes and tools, and then went to see Amanda. He understood why he was the most suspected, but he still insisted that he had nothing to do with his girlfriend's death. The police eventually confirmed Seth's alibi. He even passed a lie detector test. When he arrived at the scene, he was wearing construction shoes, which clearly did not match the Nike shoe prints at the scene. In addition, his shoe size was much larger, and the fingerprints on the glasses did not belong to him. With these facts, the police eliminated him as a suspect. Because Amanda tried to resist, she inflicted injuries on the perpetrator. The perpetrator likely suffered scratches on his body in the first weeks after the crime, as a piece of skin belonging to the perpetrator was found under Amanda's fingernails, an important piece of evidence that the police had hoped for. However, when they tested the DNA sample, they found no match in the database. The motive for the crime remains unclear, as many of the items in Amanda's room were still intact. With no signs of forced entry, the police have two theories as to how the criminals entered the house. Amanda may have known them and let them in, or she may have forgotten to lock the door. Investigators interviewed Amanda's co-workers and friends and discovered that the case may have involved a love triangle. Before dating Seth, Amanda had been in a relationship with someone else, and the breakup was not smooth because Amanda initiated it. After a while, she started dating Seth, and Amanda's ex-boyfriend did not seem to be happy with this. Jealousy sometimes leads people to act rashly with serious consequences. Investigators checked the information but found this theory to be unlikely. Amanda's ex-boyfriend provided his DNA and fingerprints, neither of which matched the traces found on her body or at the scene. Furthermore, he had a convincing alibi. Police investigated other leads but failed to find a solution to Amanda's death, leaving the investigation at a standstill. Amanda's family was determined to find justice, so they distributed flyers and held community events in the hope that someone would come forward with vital information. Amanda's mother, Michelle, said her daughter was not perfect, but she did not understand why Amanda died and why no one had reported any useful information to the police. Amanda's family faced another emotional challenge. They discovered that several police officers had taken photos of Amanda's body on their phones and shared them with others, including civilians. According to an internal report, Sergeant Keith Lame, a senior officer who was in charge of monitoring the scene at 73 School Street, where Amanda was stabbed to death on August 26, 2011, was one of the photographers. He sent the photos from his cell phone to another sergeant, who then forwarded them to a patrol officer. One officer shared the photo with civilians, including a coach at a youth soccer game. Records show that Keith used his cell phone to take the photo. Keith then forwarded the photo to Sergeant Jeffrey Godair. Sergeant Jeffrey emailed the photo to Patrolman Chad Levesque. Patrolman Chad shared the photo of Amanda, lying on the kitchen floor, with other soccer coaches. As he did so, Chad said, "This is something I have to deal with at work." The photo was shown to at least 3 coaches at a youth soccer game in Agawam the day after the murder, according to Captain William Jebb, the internal affairs officer who wrote the report. At that time, Patrolman Terry Deck, who was assigned to record all traffic in the apartment for state police, took a photo of Amanda's body and emailed it separately to 6 Chicopee police officers. The investigation found that all 6 officers deleted the emails. None of them were punished for wrongdoing, and their names were not listed on criminal records. The others were punished for incompetence and failure to meet work standards. Terry and Keith, who took the photos, received letters of reprimand. Jeffrey and Chad were docked wages. Nearly 2 years after the murder, there was no sign that the investigation was any closer to finding the culprit. So investigators decided to review all the relevant evidence, hoping to find some missing information. After reviewing the evidence and items in Amanda's bedroom, they discovered a dry erase board with a suspicious message. The message read, "Dennis was here on November 8th. Interestingly, November 8th was only about 2 weeks before Amanda's body was discovered. Investigators began to wonder about the man named Dennis and his role in the case. They began to investigate the relationship between Dennis and Amanda by examining phone records and social media posts. While investigating Amanda's apartment, police discovered that her ex-boyfriend had given them a crucial clue. He said that Amanda's apartment had been broken into several times during her absence. In particular, Amanda told him that she suspected a young Puerto Rican man whose name began with the letter D. However, she did not want to report the incident to the police and wanted to resolve the situation herself by talking to the man. Amanda tried to talk to the man about the break-in, but he would not listen. Amanda then informed him that a neighbor had witnessed him at her apartment. She also begged him to return items that were missing from her home. However, the man became angry and left. The main goal of the investigators was to identify Dennis and determine whether he was involved in Amanda's death. They discovered that a man named Dennis Rosa Roman lived near where Amanda died. A search of Dennis's records revealed that he had been convicted of burglary and breaking and entering. However, no fingerprints were found that matched the ones found at Amanda's home. Police tracked Dennis to Westfield, Massachusetts, and asked him to come to the police station to talk, but he refused. During the brief encounter, Dennis appeared very nervous. Surprisingly, Dennis turned himself into the police station in November 2013 at the age of 22. Police questioned Dennis about his connection to Amanda. Although Dennis admitted to knowing Amanda from Choppy, he said he had not seen her in several years. This made sense since Amanda had been dead for some time. Investigators then asked him if he had ever been to Amanda's apartment. He replied that he had never been there and did not really know her well. He only admitted that he sometimes sold Amanda marijuana and had had a few brief interactions with her. During questioning, Dennis agreed to provide an oral DNA sample and provided his shoe size. The results showed that his shoe size matched the shoes found at the crime scene. Officers also noted that Dennis was wearing a pair of Nike Air Max shoes, the same type as the shoes found at the scene but with a different sole pattern. After providing his DNA, Dennis refused to answer further questions and promised to return to the police station in a few days to continue the conversation. Because there was insufficient evidence to arrest him, officers were forced to release him. This raised concerns that he might be attempting to flee, causing the investigation to stall. Further investigation revealed that Amanda had been in telephone contact with Dennis on July 28, 2011. She made 4 calls and received 5 calls from him. At the same time, Dennis changed his initial statement to police, admitting that he had spoken to Amanda at times. According to Dennis, Amanda told him that people frequently broke into her apartment when she was away, but she did not report it to the police because nothing of value was missing. However, investigators had heard this story many times before and now suspected Dennis was behind the break-ins. They believed he was hiding something, as his statement changed and lacked a clear explanation. When shown a photo of the dry erase board that read, "Dennis was here on November 8, 11, Dennis suddenly remembered writing it, contradicting his previous statement that he had never been in Amanda's apartment. Additionally, DNA testing revealed that his DNA matched DNA found under Amanda's fingernails and that his fingerprints were on a glass pane at the crime scene. This evidence confirmed Dennis's connection to the crime. After realizing that too much evidence was directly against him, Dennis changed his story again. He now claimed to have been present at the crime scene and tried to save Amanda from the attacker, implying that someone else was involved. When asked about the man's identity, Dennis refused, citing fear for his safety and that of his family. Instead, he provided a detailed description of the alleged perpetrator, a tall, 170 to 200-pound white male with light skin, blue eyes, wearing old pants and dirty boots, along with a t-shirt that read, "Why drink and drive when you can smoke and fly?" Detectives did not believe Dennis's testimony, as all the evidence pointed to only one person being present at the crime scene when Amanda was stabbed. They arrested Dennis and charged him with the murder of Amanda Plass. The trial began in 2016, nearly 3 years later. Dennis's lawyers defended their client, arguing that although he was present at the crime scene, he was not responsible for Amanda's death. They accused the police of mishandling the investigation and framing Dennis after they failed to investigate thoroughly. Dennis claimed that on the day of Amanda's death, the drug dealer forced him to come to her apartment because Amanda owed the dealer $500 or $600. He claimed that the dealer started stabbing Amanda with a knife when things got bad. Dennis claimed that he wanted to intervene but was unable to stop the dealer. Dennis also claimed that Amanda had grabbed his hand, which is why his DNA was found under her fingernails. Prosecutors presented a different version of events. According to them, Dennis broke into Amanda's apartment while she was away and left a note with his name on her whiteboard. Amanda discovered this, suspected Dennis was the culprit, and called him to ask him to return her stolen belongings, which led to 9 phone calls between Amanda and Dennis. Prosecutors claimed that on the day of the murder, Dennis returned to Amanda's apartment thinking she was at work. However, Amanda had come home and a fight broke out, leading to Dennis killing her. A 12-person jury found Dennis guilty of causing the death of Amanda Plass in July 2016, after hearing 8 days of testimony and deliberating for 5 hours. The court sentenced Dennis to life in prison without parole. The police department's internal investigation into the scandal surrounding the release of Amanda's photo was delayed for years. However, in 2018, Officer Jeffrey Gaudier was finally fired in connection with the case. Although he appealed the decision, he returned to work in 2020. Due to his misconduct and previous disciplinary actions, a commission demoted him to patrol officer. Amanda's law went into effect in Massachusetts on August 4, 2022. The law makes it a misdemeanor for first responders to illegally take photos of a crime scene, punishable by up to a year in jail or a $2,000 fine. Amanda's family also filed a lawsuit against the city of Choppy, which was eventually settled out of court for $100,000.